don't see much. That's fine, I didn't spend any money.
There you go.
2 more minutes, looks like.
Anyway,
Hey, Kelly.
company coming up from New Jersey tomorrow.
Before we get started, there is a sign-in sheet on the back table for anybody who hasn't signed in, please do so.
So you have family in New Jersey or friends?
Yeah,
or-
well, I grew up in New Jersey. I was born
I
in.
think you've told me that.
Yeah, I was born in Jersey City.
Right across the river, right,
Yeah,
Jersey?
right, Jersey City is right across from where World Trade used to be. Right across the Hudson.
I actually have a high school classmate who I think lives in Jersey City now. I haven't seen her in quite a while. I don't know how she ended up there. Seems like the wrong direction, Cape Cod to Jersey City. But
Yeah, you have to be at the bike. So,
yeah.
I mean, I was gonna say, do you wanna briefly describe each of them? I mean, I can, based on what you gave me, or you can
Do that
just,
frequently went to.
why don't you do it? I have the letter ready to go that you sent over, so thank you.
You know, I was looking at the black.
Yeah, John's chairing tonight, so he'll call you up, and you have to go to a mic, otherwise the audience online can't hear you.
That's a
Or
6 hour.
on TV, we are live.
I have one relative left in New Jersey, the one that's coming up, and they live just outside of Morristown.
I
Oh,
believe.
So I get an hour.
Off 287.
Yeah. All right, right on you are.
Go ahead, John.
Okay. I'd like to call to order the September 21st, 2022 meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission. This meeting is being run as a hybrid meeting for anyone who wants to participate online. They can get instructions for accessing the GoToMeeting link on the Harwich website. So first up on the agenda is a review of conservation restrictions. There are 3 conservation restrictions. Unless someone wants to do things otherwise, we will take these in the order that they're listed on the agenda. So the first one is for 27 Soundview Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Conservation Commission. I'm Michael Locke, Executive Director of the Harwich Conservation Trust, and
Kelly Grant, Land Protection Specialist with the Compactor Cape Cod Conservation Trusts.
so we're here to present the conservation restrictions and answer any questions. So taking these in turn on your agenda. First, I just wanted to summarize what a conservation restriction is. It's a legal agreement in which a property owner chooses to exercise their property right to extinguish some or all of the development potential on some or all of their land. It's a flexible tool, and a landowner can benefit from federal income tax deductions because of the extinguishment of development value in some cases, as well as earn a state conservation land tax credit of up to $75,000 based on the appraised value of the property. In 2 of these cases, the first 2, a state income tax credit is sought by the landowner, and that's why you see the conservation restrictions being granted to the Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trust Incorporated. The key part is incorporated because the state's conservation land tax credit program requires conservation restriction or an interest in land to be granted to an incorporated entity. Harwich Conservation Trust is not incorporated. So we often partner with the Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trust Incorporated to facilitate these conservation restrictions and land donations relative to the state tax credit program to help individuals and families in town that own land and preserve them in this way. So that's the background on conservation restrictions and how they intersect with conservation restriction at 27 Soundview Road and 595 Queen Anne Road with the state's conservation land tax credit program. Relative to 27 Soundview Road, the property owners intend to donate this half-acre vacant building lot to the compact, and then, again, as a requirement of the state's conservation land tax credit program, an overlay protection. In this case, a conservation restriction must be granted by the compact, and it will be held by Arundel Wildlife Trust. So you see the prohibited and permitted uses outlined in the conservation restriction, also the conservation values protected by virtue of this project. And ultimately, what we're seeking is your recommendation letter to the Town of Harwich Select Board that they approve each of these conservation restrictions, because in order for them to be permanent, there are 4 signatories. There's the grantor, the grantee, the Town of Harwich Select Board, and then the Secretary of the State's Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. So your review and endorsement through a vote approving a recommendation letter to the Select Board is important. So I'll stop there on conservation restriction at 27 Soundview Road, unless you want me to continue with the other 2 before you have questions.
Continue, I understand.
Yeah, okay, let's do that.
Sure.
Just go through the 3 and.
So the landowners that own 595 Queen Anne Road are interested in extinguishing the development potential of an additional lot that's in addition to their existing single-family home. This property happens to be across the street from Harwich Conservation Trust Cornelius Pond Woodlands, a property that was preserved about 4 years ago with about 1,000 feet of shoreline on Cornelius or Eldridge Pond. So it's in essentially what could be considered a wildlife corridor, and it is also within Zone 2 of contribution to a public well field. So it's important conservation value, and we have been working with Mr. Hamilton and Ms. Fenn in the conservation restriction drafting process. And that's why this one is before you tonight, to move that forward in terms of endorsing it for select board approval. The third, located at 90 Squantos Path, put forth by Jake Brown and Earl Watson, is actually on a property that crosses the town boundary. It involves land in both Harwich and Brewster. The land in Harwich includes an existing single-family home, and the land in Brewster is vacant or its natural state. So this conservation restriction would protect interests in both towns. We're working with the Brewster Conservation Trust relative to their interest in protecting the ecological values on their side of the town border, and we've been working with the family Harwich side as well. Interesting to note that Mr. Brown and Mr. Watson have chosen to reduce or limit the potential building footprint in case the family decides to exercise the right to build an additional structure beyond the existing single-family dwelling. They're interested in limiting the building footprint there because they're concerned about the pond health. They like to maintain the pond's ecological integrity as well as the scenic view enjoyed by everyone that utilizes that pond. So I think it's very forward-thinking and conservation-minded. That project does not, to my knowledge at this point, involve a conservation land tax credit. That's why the conservation restriction is being granted directly to the Harwich Conservation Trust as opposed to the compact or Arenda. So that's the summary of the ecological values of each of the 3 conservation restrictions, and you have a draft recommendation letter for your consideration.
Thank you. Amy, do you have comments?
I would recommend that you authorize me to sign the letter on your behalf to the Board of Selectmen to be in favor of granting these conservation restrictions. These property owners have, on their own accord, decided this is what they want to do for their land. I think we should honor that, as well as honor it for the ecological importance of doing that. So.
Wayne?
No, I'm fine. I don't have anything to say about it.
Alan?
No, I'm good, yeah.
Jim?
No questions.
No remarks.
Brad?
No, it's all good. Quick question. So Amy, you signing in lieu of the chair, is that a change in practice?
No, so, well, what's different is that instead of us or the town holding a CR or something, in which case you would typically sign, this is just a letter saying that you're supporting it. So it's not that, we're not gonna hold any CR, in which case I would definitely want that. But this would be a letter basically stating that tonight, you are supporting putting CRs on these properties and encourage the selectmen to do so.
Okay.
Stan?
I guess I have a question. Just to clarify, Mike, I know the restriction restricts any development of the land, but the ownership, does it stay with the original owner?
Yeah,
It's not changing the property ownership, right?
it's a great question, Stan. On the conservation restriction over 59 Queen Anne Road and 90 Squantos Path, yes, those, the ownership, the underlying fee simple title in the land will reside with each of those owners. And the conservation restriction runs with the land. So if they pass it on to heirs or sell it, the conservation restriction stays in place. Yeah. In the case of the first conservation restriction relative to 27 Soundview Road, that will actually be a fee simple title donation of the land to the Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trust.
So the ownership will change.
Yes, yes. And then, once the conservation land tax credit process is completed, in a subsequent year, the compact will transfer title to Harwich Conservation Trust.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and I just have one question, sort of following up on Stan's question, which is, I didn't fully get the business about the building envelope on 90 Squanto. So that is staying in the current owner's, I mean, the property, the full property is staying in the current owner's ownership.
That's correct.
And they could at any time build within this building footprint, is that correct?
Subject to the terms of the conservation restriction, which has a limitation on maximum building footprint.
Okay. And if in the future, the land will eventually change hands at some point, and that, that possibility will remain with the land regardless of whether.
That's right, the future owners would have to abide by the conservation restriction, yeah. It's essentially an opportunity, again, for a property owner to exercise their property right to place their vision of, on the land for protection going forward through time. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Anyone in the audience here have any questions or comments? Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion that the Conservation Commission authorize Amy to send a letter of support supporting all three of these conservation restrictions, and send that letter to the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
So that's unanimous. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
For the next item on the agenda, Jim is going to take over his chair, and I will absent myself.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a discussion with a possible vote on the support of a CPC application for alum treatment in Skinnikid Pond. Do we have somebody from the applicant who would like to
Yes,
speak?
my name is Ann Helgen, and I am president of the Skinnikid Pond Association, which is called Watershed Association of South Harwich, or WASH. And at the last meeting, I did make a presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions on the application or anything that you would like to ask or comment about.
Okay. Do you mind, just in case there was somebody who wasn't present at the last meeting, just to briefly summarize, what you're trying to accomplish, and also to discuss what you think the effectiveness of the alum treatment is going to be on the pond?
I'm sorry, the last part.
The effectiveness of the alum
Okay.
treatment on the pond.
Yes, okay.
Can you just briefly summarize?
Yeah. We had a bad fish kill, toxic cyanide bacteria or toxic algae bloom in 1998 that killed off a lot of mussels and fish and tadpoles and all sorts of things. Since then, the owners over the last 25 years have tried a number of things with the town of Harwich, with Heinz, and then with Amy. Barley bales, Fugia, oxygenation, paid for by the town, not by the town, by the several pond owners. And then we installed a solar bee in 2007, which was to recirculate the water and help prevent algae growth. But we've had significant and lengthy toxic algae blooms. The pond was closed for 6 weeks last year due to cyanobacteria. And the Pond Association now has paid for a study of the water quality and sediment, and the conclusion was that the nutrient load can't be addressed by anything other than trying some sort of treatment. And they gave us 3 options: dredging, which is probably impossible on the pond and prohibitively expensive; oxygenation, which is also more expensive than alum treatment and hasn't really been proven. We've been watching what's happening in Orleans on Cerros Pond, but there isn't enough data to really justify the expense for us at this point. And so the board has made a decision to move forward with alum treatment. We expect to see better clarity, to have better water quality, less chlorophyll and less algae, less phosphorus in the water column. And I think the expectation is this would last at least could last longer than that, but at least 10 to 12 years, based on Ken Wagner, Water Resources Services report.
Okay, thank you very much. Amy, do you have any comments?
Yep, so last time we didn't have a voting quorum, that's why we had to put this on for this meeting. What you're voting for is to support them moving forward with a CPC application. The Conservation Commission will have to review this as a notice of intent application, just as it does for all projects. So your vote tonight, and I'm recommending that you vote to support the CPC application, is for $92,000, I believe.
Yes.
Out of the Recreation Fund, is simply to move this along in the process. And then over the course of the next few months, you will see the notice of intent application for the commission to vote on the project from an ecological standpoint. The
That's
town
correct. We're
does
looking for
have,
support. We do have support from the health department, the water department. Both of them are going to write a letter. Rec department is going to present it to Rec Commission and seems very supportive. Harwich Conservation Trust also is going to write a letter of support for this project.
Okay, thank you.
I was just gonna add that the town owns land on the pond, from Skinnikid Pond Road eastward towards, Ocean Drive.
It's at the end of Ocean
It's at the corner of
Street,
Lake and
but
Ocean.
Ocean and Lake, yes. They own about 9.8 acres.
we do.
Mostly, it's basically almost all, except for the upland portion, designated wetlands. It was a former primary bog that was bought by the town in the 1960s. Skinnikid Pond is also the spawning grounds for a herring run from the Red River estuary. So on the opposite end of the pond from the cranberry bog, there's a small stream that goes in and out from the Red River under Uncle Vini's Road and to the Red River estuary. And it is an active herring run. Heinz and AmeriCorps clear it out every spring to allow the herring to make it to the pond. And so that's another, a lot of the reason we want to do this is to protect the habitat and try to protect the numbers of populations as well as the number of species, and maybe even increase them with the cleaner water.
Okay, thank you. Now, with that, I want to ask if any of the commissioners have any questions or comments on this.
I don't,
So,
Jim.
Wayne,
No.
Alan?
I just had a question. How large is the pond? Do we know how many acres it is?
It's about 18 acres, and it's one of the, so it's the fourth smallest great pond. The great ponds are any
10
pond over
acres.
10 acres in Harwich, and it's the fourth deepest. It actually is about 32, 33 feet deep in the center.
So being a great pond, a state can oversee this pond.
The state will oversee this. Amy and I are working, or Amy's going to work on a notice of intent to the state, right? And
Well, that comes before the town, so
Okay.
I said I would help draft
Yeah.
that.
Well, I'm just asking, as a state status, if there's any funds available, have you sought to the state or anything?
no, I spoke to APCC, which is applying for a $500,000 grant for ARPA funds from the Barnstable County. But they want to use it for more treatments that haven't been really, or some sort of project that maybe hasn't been tried before, or that isn't as
Like an
effective,
experimental?
not effective, but isn't as known as an alum treatment. So I did write a letter of support for them to get the funds. I think that's important, but I've looked at some different places for funding, but I think really CPC is probably the best place to do it. And certainly if ABC gets the grant and there's a way that we can get some of those funds, we would get them and use them to, reduce the amount that the CPC is.
I'm just asking because in the future, if it works or doesn't work, you're gonna have to do something else and
Yeah.
look to the state and, folks to help, that's all.
I do think there's increased interest in all of the ponds. This isn't just a Cape
Right, it's all
Cod thing.
Boston,
It's not just,
yeah.
Jamaica Plain in Boston has had, so I
Understood.
think there's an increased interest. I don't think the funding has kept up with it, with everything going on, with COVID and everything.
Okay. Thank you.
The one only question I have, Amy had mentioned that what you're going for is $92,000 from CPC. How confident are you that that will be able to finish the job?
We're very comfortable. There's not that many companies that do this kind of alum treatment, and one of them just bought the other competitor, but we checked with two of them, Solitude and Wetlands, and I can't remember exactly the name, and they came in around the same. One of them didn't include sort of access to the pond, and then we added a 15% contingency, because we felt that one of the things that was noted by one of the people we talked to is that the costs had gone up significantly, as it has with almost everything else in the last year. So we feel pretty comfortable. And then we added in some reporting numbers and some other numbers. And then I just want to point out that the Pond Association paid for the study, which was about a $15,000 part of that, which would be added to the $92,000 for the total project cost, to compare it to something like Hinckley's. We're very comfortable that we'll be able to do it within that. I hope we're returning a lot of that money. I hope it's not anywhere near 92,000, but we wanted to make sure that we had enough money and didn't have to come back to the town.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
Yes.
How long do you think it'll take to secure your funding? And at what point do you think you'll actually go forward with the project?
Well, this process, CBC will take us through, we don't find out if we actually get the funds until appropriation at town meeting, which will be late next spring, in May or June. I'm not sure exactly when your town meeting will address this CPC project. And then our plan would be to have the RFP prepared to go out and then do it in the fall. We don't want to do it in the spring because of the herring run, so the plan is to do it in the fall of 2023 if the funds are made available to us.
Thank you.
Brad?
I've got a couple questions. So you do intend to submit an NOI before you get the funding? So that's gonna go forward?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that's good. Well,
I may have spoken out of the order. I meant notice of intent, right?
Yes, NOI,
okay.
notice of intent, yes.
well, it's a little, I think you probably heard this last week, it's a little unusual to have CPC focusing on an area that has so little public access. So that's not really a conservation concern, but it's something that I think people think about. So I would love to see some ability to increase public access.
Well, the Conservation Department or the town has pledged to improve the public, enhance the public access, because it's been a path that can be overgrown with poison ivy and that kind of thing, and there's some, they could cut back some branches and do that kind of thing. Unfortunately, the public access is probably, well, it's right, the only public access is a little path that's next to the wetland. All of the property that the town owns is wetland, that abuts the pond is wetlands, and so it's difficult to expand that area, and there's no real parking. And the other aspect of it is that it's down a street and down a little lane, and it's not really policeable, which is another thing that I know Amy's been concerned about and other people have been concerned about because of what's happened on other conservation lands with people dumping things and that kind of thing. So the idea is that we would enhance it for all of the people that are going. We do get fishermen who see it on a fishing site or something like that, but there's not really the land use plan doesn't recommend any further development of it as recreation. At the time that they did the survey, there was a piece of property for sale, and they said you could buy the property, use the dock for recreational purposes, and the rest of it for habitat, but that didn't happen. It's now still in private hands, so there's not really an area to do that with in the current configuration of what the town owns.
So you just have to compete for CPC funds, and it probably depends on what else applies on this given cycle.
I'm sorry, what?
You'll just have to compete for funds.
Yes.
And I just think it's kind of a disadvantage to have so little public access.
Yes, it is a disadvantage.
That's not really our business here, but that's just,
Right,
that's the way
right.
I see it. But all the same, I think it's a really good concept because you've done so much pre-treatment chemistry work.
We've spent almost $100,000 in the last 20 years to try to find ways to address this. And the pond is a very engaged, supportive group of people, and I think, in talking to Amy and Heinz, they both have told us that, there are not a lot of ponds where where people have anteed up and spent the money to try things. So I feel like this is something that we're going to try to do. We really feel it's also protecting from a conservation point of view. I mean, I know from a town point of view, the public access might be an issue. But a conservation point of view, we're really trying to protect habitat which exists there, and there's critical natural landscape. There's a number of species. There's been a number of species like herons that nest on the pond, and so it would be helpful to have a more healthy. This is one of the worst ponds in terms of trophic index that's been surveyed by various, both the open space and recreation, the comprehensive waste management, and the APCC, which is not a regulatory body, but does do a lot of testing on ponds during the summer. So I also would say that this, basically, although $92,000 is a lot of money, it's about the Hinckley's Pond project will return much more than that. And so there's, it seems like there might be, this is not really asking for new funds, but maybe a reallocation of funds that were used.
It's a good experiment in a sense because you've got all this great pre-application data, pre-treatment data, and so you can really see what the response is in this case. So it's
Responsiveness. Well, Hinckley's Pond had a survey. In fact, that was a condition of the alum treatment for CPC, and we expect that to be a condition here. So we factored that in, and so you can look at that and see what the changes have been in the different measurements, and it has been very successful. Every pond's slightly different. I mean, what?
a little too soon to conclude much on Hinckley's.
Excuse me?
It's a little too soon to conclude much on Hinckley's.
Yeah.
You need a little
Well,
more
we've
time.
looked at other ponds too, but I think Ken would tell you that our pond is different just in the makeup certain things, and because of the herring, they eat the zooplankton, which helps keep the algae at bay. So the more herring there are, the more zooplankton get eaten. So there's we can expect, I think, a significant improvement, but it may not match exactly what other ponds have experienced.
Thank you.
Stan, do you have any? Okay, is there anybody in the audience here that has any comments or questions? Okay, is there anybody online?
Good evening. Can you guys hear me? It's Heinz Prof.
Okay, Heinz, do you have some comments that you would like to share with us?
Not any direct to mention that I was listening to the presentation and I'm here for that. the agenda as well, and Ann did a very good job summarizing it. So I'll just let it pass on. Just in case someone had a direct question for me, I just wanted to let you know that I was on. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody else online that has any comments or questions? Okay, hearing.
I just want to point out that Heinz is the applicant here, so he will be deeply involved, as will
Okay.
Amy. Okay.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. Okay, I guess if there are no other comments or questions, I think I'd like to call for a motion as with regard to our support of the CPC application.
I'll make a motion that we support the CPC application for alum treatment in Skinnikid Pond.
Okay, do I have a second? on it?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor, and I have a second to that motion. Is there any discussion of the motion? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Hearing no opposition, it's a unanimous vote to support the application to
Thank
the
you.
CPC.
Is it typical for you to write a letter of support, or do I just note that you have voted in support of this?
Uh,
I'll write a letter.
Amy will.
Amy, okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate your time tonight, and the last time, too.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're waiting for our chairman of the evening to return.
Chairman, next item.
Okay, I turn the chairmanship back to you, Jay.
Thank you, Jim. So, next item on the agenda is Lisa and Mark Buron, 74 Depot Road West. May I be-
No.
No, I'm skipping, sorry.
Yeah.
Heinz Proft and
Right.
Bradford Chase, 38 Prince Charles Drive, map 110, parcel S18, repairs to Black Pond Fishway.
Good evening, I'm Brad Chase, I work for the Massachusetts Division of Marine Fisheries, and I'm here to present the Black Pond Fishway repairs, along with Heinz Proft, who is the applicant for the town of Harwich, and we're also working with the two property owners who also are involved with the application. I don't know if they're on tonight or not. Either way, I'm gonna present the project to you. You've seen the packet, and really, it's a pretty simple project. There's an existing wood flume that connects Long Pond to Black Pond. Black Pond's a 9-acre pond that has river herring that run to it for spawning and nursery habitat. The fishway origin is unknown. It probably goes back a long ways, but it has come into disrepair, and there's wood planks that need to be replaced. We need to jack the fishway walls open to spread them, and we'll put some spreader bars on top to keep them spread. There's erosion occurring on the Long Pond side, so we will try to shore up that erosion with a little bit higher walls to the boards. We'll move a few boulders out of the way that are right now obstructing the entrance to the fishway. So it's really a tuning and a repair to existing fishway as opposed to a full replacement. We would like to do the work in about 3 days. There'll be no excavator used, it'll all be hand digging, all manual labor, working with Town of Harwich staff, as well as my crew with the Division of Marine Fisheries. So I'd be happy to take any questions, or if there's any omissions, anything else I should add at this point, Amy?
Just say you're recusing yourself as a member of the commission.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Chair, I am excusing myself as a member of the commission.
So the question, water levels being so low, we did notice when we were out there today, I mean, the levels of each of the ponds on either side are drastically lower
Mhm.
than what's in the run itself, no
Right.
water being in the run. Are you doing hand digging to be able to get the water out or?
Yeah, so for now, we're going to remove the sand from inside the fishway.
Okay,
And we may not cut the elevation at the entrance and exit down to a level that would allow flow, because the Long Pond is just so low presently.
gotcha.
So we'll bring the sand down, and we'll talk to Heinz and make a decision on whether we want to do this later, because we'll want to see the juvenile river herring leave at some point this fall.
Mhm.
Right now, the elevation of Long Pond may not allow it. And so we're not gonna artificially lower that entrance too much, but we will remove all the sand from the fishway.
Yeah.
And then make a decision on how far to cut it down. Unfortunately, these locations, they always will have sand that just builds up and accumulates every year. And so it's probably gonna be an annual maintenance activity to go down there and remove sand from the entrance and the exit to this fishway.
I don't have any questions really. It's a fairly minor project to repair what's there. As we saw today, some sections are in worse shape than others. And this is all handwork. And I would recommend approval with a -2 determination. Work will take place in a resource, but not negatively impact a resource.
Okay, thank you. Do we
No
have
comment
comments,
from me.
Wayne?
I just had a question. Do you know which way it flowed? I mean, with the water levels being so low, was it draining out of Black's Pond or flowing from Long Pond into Black's?
The thought that I've gathered over the years, that it's coming from Long Pond, and as opposed to having like groundwater charge up in Black Pond and go the other way.
It looks a little higher. Long Pond looked a tiny bit higher today.
Right.
Maybe it was just playing tricks on my eyes.
Yeah, a little bit of rain. It's such an easy slope, we didn't even survey it. We're just trying to replace in kind what's there. So it would have been interesting to survey to see if we have, any real difference in water surface elevation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Jim?
No comments.
I really don't have any questions.
Okay.
Just curious, Brad, looking at the Black Pond side, it looked like if the water level was normal, it would get to the fish, normal level. But on the Long Pond side, again, that was just my visual impression.
Yep.
It was still not gonna reach the fishway.
On the present water surface elevation, which is really low. And
I was just looking at the ground around it. You could see kind of the water line on the Black Pond side, but I couldn't tell the difference on the Long Pond
It's
side.
got to come up quite a bit, before it's going to go across. Someone dug this years ago. It's not a natural channel, and they probably dug it for the river herring. And so these type of channels, we like to maintain them, but it's an interesting concept. It's not a natural avenue for fish to go, similar to from Hinckley's to Seymour. And so when you cut these channels in a sandy area, you have to make a decision to maintain them.
So if the water level doesn't come up sufficiently for this year, you commented you're not planning to dig other than the natural level, so.
What we'll do is we'll keep an eye on juvenile river herring in Black Pond, and if there are herring that want to escape, we will go in there, it might be mid-October, it might be late October, and actually drop that elevation to let them out. We did that in Seymour Pond a couple of years ago, and so it's really just keeping in touch with Heinz Proft and just making a decision on whether to do that or not. I believe some herring got in there this spring, that's what I was told locally. So there are probably some juveniles that are trapped, they cannot get out right now. And so at some point in the fall, you want to release them to get them out.
Okay, thank you.
I am the son of the property owner on
You
Okay.
could come up to the microphone, and the chairman needs to recognize you.
Yes, well, I was gonna ask if there were people in the audience
the
who
son of
would
the
like to.
property owner on the Harwich side, and I've been digging out this fishway for 42
Can
years.
you identify yourself, please, by name?
Oh, Randy Parker.
Thank you.
And I think it was a natural channel decades ago, in the 50s in particular. There's pictures that show that it was an open channel. Erosion filled it in with sand. I think it was the Cape Cod Mosquito Control Program in 1992 brought in an excavator and created a current channel. This is the first year herring haven't been able to run through. Typically, they run through in May.
Couldn't get through.
I shovel it out when I come up here and other family members. So this year did not open at all. Yeah, and currently, of course, the water level's too low to support the depth of the channel, as you point out. I wouldn't mind it getting excavated enough so that the water quality in Black Pond could be improved. The flow of water is from, every time I've ever seen it for 42 years, from Long Pond into Black Pond, and I think it exits over into Seymour. I think there's some drain over where a lock used to be in a cranberry bog.
Increase. Interesting, so herring did not get up this spring.
This spring they couldn't. It's not just sand in the winter that blocks it. It's debris from overhanging trees. Leaves clog it.
Yeah.
There's muck in there in the spring.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll be around next week.
Yeah.
All right, we'll talk more.
I'm Sue Parker. And Brad, we've been emailing back and forth forever, but thank you. I just like to say I'm Randy's wife, daughter-in-law of the owner, Lorraine Parker. Charles Parker passed away in February. But we just like to thank Brad and Hines, and also Chris Miller, I think, through Brewster, for all the work, particularly Brad and Hines have done to kind of just dog through this process, because it is a minor project, but it is impactful to not only the fish that can't get through, but also to the people that live on Long Pond. They're very concerned about the quality of the water. On Black Pond, on Black Pond, that's become quite stagnant, you know, and things are growing in there that probably shouldn't be growing if the water was flowing like it normally did. So thank y'all very much for your efforts and dedication.
It is a good point, because other aquatic life will benefit from that connectivity between the ponds. You'll have migrations, you'll have movement, you'll have water quality improve. So it is about more than just the river herring.
Okay, thank you, Art. Is there any more comments or questions from the audience? Anyone, any more comments here? Can we have a motion?
Sure. I'll move that we approve the request for determination of applicability for 38 Prince Charles Drive, map 110, parcel S18, with a -2 determination.
Second.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, can we, all those in favor, please?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No opposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next on the agenda is Lise and Mark Buron, 74 Depot Road West, map 18, parcel B6-1, for site work. Can you
Hi.
Hi there.
identify yourselves,
Sure.
please?
Mark Buron?
And Lisa Buron.
Thank you.
Sure.
Why don't you go ahead and describe what you're proposing to do?
Okay, well, we had, Amy came out over the summer and met with my wife to go over the plan, the front yard. So the front yard has a dip in it, for lack of a better word. And what we're looking to do is just more fill in that dip with fill, and then loam and seed, put in irrigation, and put a fence down the side of the properties, just to more beautify it as to what it is, compared to what it is now.
It's a lot of brush. The trees, we just moved in November. We've already have some limbs, take out cable lines and things like that on the trees. A lot of the trees are dying, if not dead already, so we're just concerned about the branches and the trees falling on the house. So it's really just kind of cleaning it out and, yeah, just filling it in.
Okay, thank you. Amy?
So the project is roughly 80 feet away from the wetland, which is across the street. So only about the first 20 feet from the road into the property is within the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction. The bowl that they wish to fill is larger than that, but again, mostly not in our jurisdiction. A lot of the vegetation that is within your jurisdiction is invasive. They wish to bring up the grade with some clean native fill and plant grass seed. It would have to be grass seed, it would have to be a native grass seed. We can give you some specs on that.
Sure.
If this is approved. And we would recommend, or I would recommend that you do at least a row of some native shrubs along the road line. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. You'd not be allowed to put any fertilizers, chemicals, pesticides. I think we noticed a pesticide sign on the property when we took a peek at it. I bring the commissioners every
Okay.
time.
Yep, I can see that, yep.
So you would not be able to do that in our jurisdiction at
Okay.
least.
Okay.
We would encourage, you to not do it on the rest of your property or
Yeah.
to look for more natural means.
Okay.
So, but I would recommend with the condition that we normally put about, native grass seed as well as no chemical application and the row of native plantings, which I would be happy to make recommendations for them if you were to approve, because I don't think it's not that many. I don't think we need a planting plan. I would recommend approval with a -3 determination.
Okay, thank you. Let's go the other way. Stan?
I don't have
Mark?
I have no questions.
Jim?
Just one quick question. When do you plan to do the site work, assuming you get the approval today?
When we can find we'll talk to a couple landscape people, once we get the approval, and then we'll see at that point when they're able to do it. I would say probably at this point wouldn't be till spring.
Right.
Not till spring.
I would think so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No questions?
No question?
Okay, I just have a comment, which I agree with Amy, that it would be a good idea to plant some natives in that area, at least a row along the road.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's my only comment, so do we have any other comments from anybody or questions? So can we have a motion, please?
Sure. I will move that we approve the request for determination of applicability for 74 Depot Road West, map 18, parcel V6-1, with a -3 determination.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
You might have one abstention.
Yeah, you have one abstention.
Yes, excuse me, one abstention, one,
Okay,
two.
Great.
so we will have this out to you shortly. Do you want us to mail it to you, or do you want us to pick it, or do you want to pick it up?
Mail's probably better.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank
good
you
night.
for your time.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're on to a notice of intent from Michael Locke and Kelly Grant for 2 Old Chatham Road, map 65, parcel N6-3, removal of structure and hardscape.
Sorry, is my site summary not in order with?
No.
Yeah, it was a little
Just
loud.
wrote on my order, yeah.
Okay, well, the site summary says Sisson Road. What does the agenda say?
Lisa and Mark.
Perfect.
No, I mean, Michael Locke and Kelly
Okay.
Grant.
I apologize for my error. You're good.
Okay.
So Michael Locke, Executive Director of the Harwich Conservation Trust.
And Kelly Grant, Land Protection Specialist with Compacted Cape Cod Conservation Trust. So I guess I'm acting as the representative for the project, but also for the applicant, who is the Harwich Conservation Trust, but also representing the property owner, who at the moment is the compact. Amy, did you want the original?
I'll take them, yeah. In an hour after is fine.
Do you want to start with a little bit of the background? of the
Sure.
acquisition?
Yes. So as you know, we often work with our partner organization, the nonprofit Compacted Cape Cod Conservation Trust Incorporated. It's a regional land trust service center that provides technical assistance to more than 30 member organizations, land trusts across southeastern Mass, including Harwich Conservation Trust. And one of the roles that the compact helps local land trusts with is acting as a pre-acquisition agent or a buy and hold agent when a closing timeline is sooner than the timeline needed to raise funds to offset land purchase for conservation purposes. And so that's the case here. We called on the compact to act as a buy and hold agent on Harwich Conservation Trust's behalf because the property located at 2 Old Chatham Road became available through a bank foreclosure auction. And we recognize the environmental significance of the property, given that it has 300 feet of shoreline on coastal plain pond, White Pond, approximately 12-acre, 20-foot deep cold water pond, includes Plymouth gentian, state-listed rare wildflower species along the shoreline, and an abandoned house. And so the house is mostly within the 100-foot buffer to the pond. We recognize the need to remove the house, restore the habitat, and so we also called upon the compact to help us with the notice of intent process, and that's why we're here this evening.
Okay, so just a bit more of a description of the site. It's approximately 1.4 acre lot that's bordering Old Chatham Road on the south and White Pond to the north, and it runs along the Harwich Dennis town line to the west of the property. So the site contains a single family dwelling that, as Mike said, is abandoned. There's also the associated hardscape, a looping driveway, a patio deck, cesspool, private well, and just a small pet enclosure. There's a trail that runs from the driveway down the side of the property down to the pond, which has been maintained over the years. And then, so the intent of the project is to remove any of the hardscape on the site and to restore it back to a natural condition. So the resource areas on the site obviously is the pond and the shoreline up to the high water mark where you see that shoreline vegetation. The property then starts to slope up gently. There's a bordering wetland along the edge of the pond. With species including sweet pepper bush, red maple, swamp azalea, before the site slopes up to upland species. Because of the nature of the project, where we're effectively removing any hardscape and restoring the area to natural conditions, we didn't do a new wetland delineation. We used the delineation that had been done previously, but we did confirm that in the field to make sure that it was still rang true. And because any of the work we're doing is 50 foot or almost 50 feet back from that wetland line, we didn't do any new wetland delineation work. So the work land limit around the demolition area, we've tried to keep that as close as possible to the structure, just so that we can limit as much as possible any ground disturbance and any vegetation removal that is necessary as part of the demolition. So the work itself is going to include the installation of the silt fence, the removal and disposal of any of the other accessory items on the property, including the camper van that's out the front, the removal and disposal of the oil storage tank, and then the demolition of the structure, the foundation, the driveway area, and then the draining and filling of the cesspool, filling of the basement void, and then loaming, seeding, and planting that area. So for the work line limit, we'll be installing an erosion control barrier with a fabric silt fence. I've indicated that on the plan, though it may change just a little bit, based on the site conditions when we're out there. The cesspool wasn't marked on the plan at the time, but has been located to the west of the structure. So while we want to keep the work line limit in as close to the house as possible, there will be a little bit of localized work outside that line just to deal with the cesspool. The fence, the enclosure for the pet enclosure is outside of that work limit, but that's just going to be removed by hand, so there should be very little disturbance in that area. And then the erosion control will follow the line of the contours. The structure is just over the crest of the highest point, which is obviously a good thing because you're not going to have runoff towards the pond. So we'll line up with the crest of the contours there to contain any ground disturbance sediment or runoff from that area. And then follow that down the eastern side of the property where it does gently slope towards the pond at that point. So the demolition work will be carried out from the street side of the structure, just utilizing existing disturbed areas. So yeah, any heavy equipment will just remain in that area. And then all of the demolition material will be removed off-site and will be disposed of, I believe, at the Harwich recycling facility. So in the disturbed areas, restoration plantings will be carried out post-demolition. As I said, the area will be loamed and seeded with a New England native grass seed mix. We plan to do that immediately following the demolition. The demolition will likely take place in the fall, early winter, which is obviously not an ideal time for planting. So we will at least seed and mulch the area to keep it stabilized through the winter, and then come back and do any additional plantings in the spring. So the shrub species are for infilling that area. We plan to do that intermittently just to help the area fill back in. Obviously, we'll have the native grass species there as well, but we are trying to re-infill with undergrowth that area. And that will be based on kind of availability of plantings at the time, but will include species such as inkberry, sweet pepper bush, sweet fern, low bush blueberry, holly, sheep laurel, plantings such as that. And then in the interim, that area will be kept stabilized. We'll keep the erosion control in until the plantings are in and the area is stabilized. And then the Conservation Trust staff will continue to monitor that. We may need some temporary irrigation while the plants get established, especially if the drought conditions continue, and then just monitor that ongoing. So then the last part of the project is the removal of the invasive wisteria, which is growing up on the west side of the structure and the kind of landscape area. So it's choking out a lot of the native trees there. So the plan is to just cut those vines at their base, and then on the larger size vines, treat those locally with an herbicide, just to obviously try and eradicate that wisteria, and then we would come back and monitor that over time if there are additional treatments that are required, and that would be carried out by a licensed applicator. And so then we would just ask that beyond the certificate of compliance, if we could have an ongoing condition to be able to continue to just monitor that area for invasives. So I guess at this point I'll open up to any questions.
Amy?
The only question I have is, in your application, you touch on the existing path that goes down to the pond, and you say you're going to keep it at a width of, I think, no more than 5 feet. It is a little bit wider than that now, so are you going to be doing anything in particular to narrow that, or are you just going to let it fill in a little bit over time?
The latter.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at the road, which is outside of our jurisdiction, are you going to be putting up some sort of barrier so that people cannot drive down it? I think there is now, but actually there isn't.
There's a barrier on one side.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, I would encourage you to put some sort of barrier up, so that people they cannot drive down, all the way down that path. And I know you talked about in the future, maybe having a spot or two designated up on the street, but I just don't want to see we don't want to see illegal activities, and I'm sure you don't down near the pond. But I think this is a great project. This is a highly disturbed site that is in really need of a cleanup. So I'm very happy that you've acquired it, and I would recommend approval of them for their project.
Thank you. Wayne?
Yeah, the only comment I have is on the draining and filling of the cesspool. Rather than just fill it in, it should be excavated out with the old blocks and the sludge and everything that's in the bottom, and then fill it in. You don't want to just fill it in on top of the sludge, because that'll be there to migrate into the ground, and the pumping won't take it all out.
Oh.
Okay. Thank you.
I just had a question. It's your property or land. The house is not habitable at all for any future occupancy. There was no consideration of anybody renting that because of the housing problem we have in the town of Harwich. Do a joint venture, similar to what your conservation restrictions were just a few minutes, half an hour ago with the property, and maintain it as a home and have that restrictions around it. There was no opportunity for that.
I think it's a great question, and we look at each of these properties that have structures on a case-by-case basis. Before I answer the question relative to this structure, as an example of a property that the trust received as a donation from a couple whose primary residence is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and they had a property with a small ranch in Harwich. They no longer wanted to make the trip out to that property, and so they offered it as a donation to the trust with this house on it. And so the trust did its due diligence, looked at it structurally, and determined that with some roof repair and a septic system improvement, that the trust could keep that house in place, and has ever since over the past decade, and kept it, I might add, at an affordable rental rate below what the market rental rates are, which rentals we know are few and far between. So we feel that as an organization, we can help with the housing challenge by keeping it at that lower rate, while also the income from that rent helps to advance our land saving work. So we're always looking at these on a case-by-case basis. So when we examined this property, and that the health department had already visited the property and rendered an opinion on the health of the structure, and when we looked at it from a structural standpoint, it is far beyond the ability to renovate and restore. So it's unfortunate. It's I think a situation in which we see these properties end up in this condition, eventually in this case in a bank foreclosure process, sold as is, and so we thought the best approach would be to remove and restore the site's natural qualities. So that's how we came to where we are on this site.
And just respect for my question there, because I understand what the ultimate goal is for the compact and the land trust and all that, but I just wanted to ask that question because that's something that happens, maybe not so often, but it can happen. And you don't want to lose sight of all the needs when we're trying to cover all the bases for everybody. This is me just speaking my own opinion. I'm not rendering any of this on you as the applicant, but it's something to consider, and I'd hate to see something that could be salvaged in, some way and fashion. But other than that, that's all I have.
Yeah, thank you for that. I did want to mention that some contractors would not enter the property, just to give you a sense of its condition. So,
Fine, fair.
yeah, and I understand where you're coming from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jim?
Sorry, no questions.
I have no questions.
Brad?
I have one. I agree with Amy, cleaning up that site will definitely be an improvement there. We do mention an empty oil tank, though.
Yes.
How did it get emptied? I mean, are we sure it hadn't leaked at some point and everything just drained out over the years, and you might have a potential problem with the soil around that tank?
Yeah, we took a look at that. It's an interior oil tank in the basement.
Oh.
There was no evidence of leak. It was a double-walled tank, by the way. Based on our due diligence, our understanding is that it was fully, the fuel was fully used. And so it was a clean removal.
I excuse myself for that. I was thinking of an in-ground tank. That's
Yeah,
what
no,
I was
it's a
thinking.
fair question.
Oil tank.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions or comments? And we have a motion here. I don't have any,
I don't know if
for
there's
any other
anybody in
questions.
the audience.
Anyone in the audience?
Okay.
I'll move for approval for the LOI of 2 Old Chatham Road, map 69, parcel N63, as stated.
And I'll second.
We need to put an order of conditions in there about the cesspool removal being dug out and filled in, rather than just pumped and filled.
Yeah, you'll see the draft orders next meeting, so you can
Okay.
fine tune my language.
Okay.
Okay. Moved and seconded. No other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is Daniel Mento, 116 Sisson Road, map 30, parcel G5-4 for a new dwelling. Do we have someone online?
Yep, that'll be me representing.
I'm sorry, can you state your name again? I didn't quite hear it.
Oh, I didn't introduce myself, sorry. For the record, my name is Hannah Raditz with BSD. I'm standing in for Kieran sort of last minute on this project.
Okay, thank you. You have the floor.
I'm not sure if this was presented at the previous conservation hearing. I know that Kieran Healy did discuss the project with the agent. If the commission would like me to go over a quick overview of the project, I can do that.
Kieran did present the project at the last meeting, but if you would like to go over the changes that were made as a result of the last meeting, which is, or I'm happy to point them out.
Yeah, he wrote me a quick email. He's stuck in Toronto tonight, otherwise he would have been here with you to present the changes. So this project being the construction of a single-family dwelling within 100-foot buffer zone to BBW, he mentioned that there's going to be a change in the hay bale line, I believe, of the limit of work. Or was there addition, Amy?
There was a change in the work limit line, and also the addition of, within the limit of work is a replanting of 400 square feet with native plantings, and that's behind the garage after the project is done.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that was in his notes. He also mentioned that the dwelling was going to be moved by 2 feet. I'm assuming he meant landward.
Yes.
Or shifted. Removing the stairs from the 100-foot buffer zone to BBW, I believe.
Yeah, moving the stairs, which were pointing towards the wetland, to the side of the deck, which would allow for the limit of work to come in a little bit more and get more of the structure outside the buffer.
I think that was all of his comments for the revisions to the plan. He didn't mention anything else important. Is there anything worth bringing up, Amy, that needs more discussion?
Not that I think so, but the chairman will ask me for my comments of the revisions as well as comments from the commission.
Which I will do now
With me
unless
being
you,
sort of uninformed about this, I might just open up to the commission to see if they have any questions or additional revisions that they haven't seen with this revised plan.
okay, thank you. Amy, do you want to?
So at the last meeting, so this is a vacant lot on a vegetated wetland, and the last meeting, the commission asked a few things. Asked, to minimize to the greatest extent practicable. You can see, based on the revised plan, if you compare it to the one that we had at the last meeting, the house did shift a couple of feet forward towards the road. That put only a portion, well, 2/3 of the deck and the very back of the structure of the bedroom, the house and garage right at that 100-foot line. So the majority of the work that's in the buffer zone is grading, is clearing and grading on this lot. The stairs were pointing towards the wetland off the back side of the deck. Those have been reorientated to the side and outside the 100-foot buffer zone. Ernie Crabtree, our chairman, wanted the limit of work brought in on the the west side of the lot, which is now. We had said, is there a way to replant some of the area that you're disturbing, especially behind the proposed garage where you have a fairly, steep grade down. It's not really a usable yard area, so that could be replanted, which they have shown to be replanted with bearberry, blueberry, and sweet fern. I would recommend changing those species a little bit to be larger species, such as inkberry, sheep laurel, arrowwood, viburnum, things like that. Things that are more, that you're gonna see in this area a little bit more and would act as a little bit more of a physical barrier. Those lower things could potentially tend to get trampled. This is not within a mapped priority habitat for species. Let's see. So there's very little mitigation required necessarily for this because it's new structure within the buffer. So it's the portion of the deck. And again, they're replanting area within the buffer zone. What I had suggested as mitigation and as also a preventative for people going into the more sensitive area is that along the limit of work line that you do some sort of living fence or intermittent stones or split rail fence or a combination of any of those means, but to be a physical deterrent for, especially, if people want to walk out there, that's one thing, but a physical deterrent for your lawnmower, things like that, along the limit of work line. And that is actually at about the 75-foot line, so well past your 50-foot no disturb zone. And I would consider that as mitigation for the project. And if possible too, this is less on the scale of things, but outside the limit of work, closer to Sisson Road, specifically if you're looking at the property from the street. On the right-hand side, there is a fairly large area that potentially, if it would be possible to save a couple of trees that are in that area, so it's not just completely, wide open. That is outside the 100-foot buffer zone. It's something we've looked at as mitigation other times, but I think the more important thing here is getting some sort of a living fence or a or some means of preventing too much activity past that limit of work line. So if the applicant could agree to that, I would recommend approval.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Shall we have comments from the commission? Let's start with Stan. Brad.
Have no remarks?
None.
Okay, I will just say that I agree with Amy's comments that it's probably a good idea to have a living fence or some kind of barrier like that and make that part of whatever the conditions are. If the applicant will agree, I don't, do you think?
I think the applicant would be willing to have a barrier, certainly for mowing. And I also agree with the change of the shrub sizes for that area behind the garage. That's easily done, and we can have a revised planting plan done. And as for the fence, Kieran will have to discuss with the client what kind of fence he'd like, but I understand that I should communicate that that fence or barrier should be one that would prevent mowing within beyond the 70 to 75 foot buffer zone.
Yeah, so it would be, and nothing like a stockade fence. It would have to be, if it was an actual fence, something like split rail. A lot of people like the combination of split rail, intermittent stones, some plantings as well. Something that wildlife can still pass through, but is clear to an owner that, you shouldn't be going back there.
So can we leave that to you to work out?
I will have to approve it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, about what exactly it is, but we can put that in the order of conditions. And that would be discussed at the on-site pre-construction meeting if this gets approved.
Any comments from the audience? No? Can we have a motion?
Sure. I will move that we approve the notice of intent for 116 Fiffin Road, map 30, parcel G5-4.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
That was a late aye.
Oh, you're late. Okay, so we've got, what do we have? 5 ayes and a late eye? Okay, no opposed. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, let's see. Now we're at Daniel Mento, 3 Mark Lane, map 30, parcel G5-3, new dwelling. There's been a request for a continuance.
To October 5th.
Okay, we need a motion.
I'll move to grant the continuance for 3 Mark Lane.
Second?
Discussion until October 5th, is that part of the motion?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Next on the agenda, Edward Steiger, 7 Laurie Lane, map 22, parcel A4-3, retaining wall and site work. Do we have Edward Steiger or a representative online?
That is I.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to describe what you're up to here?
Well, we were together in July, and I need to dismantle the existing retaining wall and move it back to a particular location. So I hired a surveyor to survey the lot to understand where the retaining wall needed to be. So I have that staked. And so I'm here today to seek permission to dismantle the existing retaining wall and move its location to be where the current stakes are located. I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Amy, any comments?
Yep, just to remind the commission, this application is as a result of, is an after-the-fact filing for the regrading and installation of new retaining walls without a permit. You did issue a $300 fine, and Mr. Steiger did pay this fine. Some of the work was within the 50-foot buffer. This is the work that's closest to the road. Found that wall, which had been previously a very low wall, but now is a higher wall, was actually within the road layout, and I directed Mr. Steiger to speak with DPW to see if he could, if they could leave it in that space, or if they wanted it moved outside the road layout. The DPW just wants it outside the road. In addition to that wall, there is a new wall kind of alongside their garage and driveway that would have had to have had applications, so this serves as that application for that as well. I would estimate approximately, because it's just a timber wall, maybe 20 square feet of new wall in your jurisdiction. No mitigation is proposed. It is a very small amount. Normally, we would require a 2-to-1 mitigation for any new structure. This would amount to only about 4 or 5 shrubs, native shrubs, within the 100-foot buffer zone. He is separated from the wetland by the road, so there's really no place on his property to provide like contiguous habitat or buffer to a wetland. But if you did want to require shrubs, I would suggest that they be on top of the wall, not the wall near the road, the one kind of back by your the driveway and garage, and that you place 4 to 5 native shrubs kind of along the top of that wall where there would typically have just been Cape Cod grass. But I think with that condition and with the condition that there's no fertilizing or chemical application on the property, which is what we typically require, I would recommend approval of the project, and we can kind of put this matter to bed.
Okay, comments, Wayne?
No, I think he's covered everything.
No comments?
Jim?
No comments.
Question. Once the retaining walls are removed at the edge of the road, the new one is constructed, what's the overall height of that wall?
That's gonna be within, it's gonna be, supposed to be 4 feet, I believe. I mean, I'm only building the wall because it needs to have because it's a sharp drop off. I mean, it's not like I want to build the wall anyway, but I need something to, and the existing wall's in deterioration, which was next to the road.
Yeah.
So so I was told that I could do it at 4 feet.
Right, but what I'm getting at is, once those walls at the edge of the road now are removed, the new wall
Yes.
back at the lot line being 4 feet high, what happens to the earth between the wall and the edge of the road? Does that bank get cut down to road level? So the shoulder becomes road level at that point? Or is that wall gonna be higher and you're gonna have a slope up front?
The DPW told me to just have it as gravel.
They're gonna remove that excess sediment.
So that's gonna be cut down to shoulder height?
Well, it's gonna be cut down to the road, so,
Oh, yeah.
right. So, just to gravel it, is what he's saying.
That answers my question, thank you.
Brad? Okay, I don't have any questions, although something that no one's commented on is Amy's suggestion for planting some shrubs or something on top of the wall, which I think is a good idea. I would like to see that as part of the order of conditions. That's amenable to the applicant.
Yeah, I mean, you know what, to tell you the truth, I haven't even thought that far ahead. I'm just trying to manage the process. I did speak to a landscaper of making sure that we have a grass that that is environmentally friendly and is in compliance with the town amenities. And so you told me that costs whatever, $500 a bag or whatever you said or whatever. So that's all I've thought about thus far. So if you want me to put in some kind of shrub, then I'm happy to consult with Amy.
Yeah, I would give you a couple of options and show you where on the plan, but it's only a couple, 4 to 5. It's not many.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, someone ready to make a motion?
Okay, I'll move that we approve the notice of intent for 7 Lorry Lane, map 22, parcel A4-3.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Mr. Chairman, oh, sorry. I have to announce the next one, but then I have a suggestion on changing the order up to
Okay.
help the people who are here.
Okay, so next on the agenda is Donald and Nina, 14 Mill Point Road, map 1, parcel J1-94. Proposed pier, ramp, float, and dredging. I understand there's been a request for continuance.
They would like a continuance to October 19th. They're investigating ways to improve habitat within the water.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
Sure. I will move that we continue the hearing on 14 Mill Point Road, map 1, parcel J1-94, until our meeting of October 19th, 2022.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Now, you have a suggestion, Amy?
Yep, I would suggest that we skip the order of conditions till later for Richard Tupper. I would suggest that we do the 2 requests for certs of compliance for 11 Harbor Way, as Mr. Monroe from Coastal Engineering is online, and it should just take a few minutes. And then I would recommend after that that we jump to the show cause hearings for 754 Route 28 and 16 Old Coach, and do the rest of the certs after.
Okay. Sounds good. Any objections? Hearing none, let's proceed here with 11 Harbor Way. So, Don, would you like to speak to these 2 items?
Sure, thank you, through the chair. As you know, this is the Fish House property, and the first work that we did on the project was for the emergency foundation and repairs to the building itself, as your agent and the harbor master at that time realized with our analysis that it was teetering on the point of falling into the river. So that foundation that has the needle beams and the outboard pilings was completed quite a while ago, but in the meantime, because we have the second certificate request, the mitigation plantings and all the other amenities that were approved prior to the emergency work is also completed. So the first step would be, I believe, Amy, I don't know if that's the first one, but if either way is fine with me, I'd like to get a certificate of compliance approved by the commission for the emergency work that was done to make repairs to the fish house, which now houses a pretty significant shellfish operation that's going very well. So that's the first order. Then the second would be looking at the plantings that were done by Lindsay Strode, as well as some changes to the parking area to make it narrower and putting stones around to minimize how much parking's done in that parking lot area. So that's where we're at. We're looking to close out these 2 with the town, and then there's a third one that we're closing out with the state under a superseding order.
Okay, can we just take these both together?
Yeah, that's how I evaluated them, was both together. So if you want, I'll give you my review both together.
Please, yes.
So, because I view it all as one project. So we have an as-built for the building itself. The building is in the footprint that was approved, and also in generally the same, footprint of the fish house that had been there. Better anchored, fewer pilings. And so for And then the plantings, if you recall, a large part of that area was shell, gravel, dirt, and the commission had the old fish piers removed, which have been a long time ago, and a fair amount of native planting all around the edges to decrease the amount of area that people can park while still giving enough access for the Aquaculture Resource Center, who leases this out, as well as, if need be, like an emergency turnaround for any police and fire vehicles. So the last piece was to finish the planting, which has been in for about a year now, if not actually a little bit more. I did my inspection. Everything is taking well except for one small spot on the left near the water. As you look at the fish house, Lindsay Strode from Cape Organics said he's going to attempt to try to address that. It is it's a very small area. It just seems like it might be unsuitable. It gets inundated a lot there. So if it doesn't the plants don't retake, I'm not too concerned about it. It's a very small area. Did notice and brought it to their attention, there's been a little erosion under the stairs. I talked to Mr. Zarette about that, because that's, I would say, a safety hazard. But the structure itself is in compliance, the plantings are in compliance, and I would recommend certs for both SE numbers for 11 Harbor Way.
Thank you. Stan? Brad?
No comments? No remarks on it?
No
Jim? Alan?
No comments?
None.
Okay. Once again, any other comments or questions from the audience? Okay, hearing none. Can we have a motion?
Sure.
Go ahead. I'll make a motion that we issue a certificate of compliance for both, 11 Harbor Way, map 1, parcel H3, SE 32-2242, and also 11 Harbor Way, map 1, parcel H3, SE number 32-2301.
Now, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All in favor, none opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you through the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Okay, so where are we next?
Actually, before we get to the show causes,
All right.
Hannah, are you still on are you here to listen to One Shore Drive order of conditions?
Yep, yeah,
Okay.
I figured I'd stay in case there's questions.
All right, well, I anticipate this taking a minute or two, so if you don't mind, we'll do that first real quick. The orders of conditions for One Shore Drive, just so Hannah can get off while we deal with the things that might take a little bit longer.
Okay. So,
Do you have any, so the orders of
comments?
conditions for One Shore Drive, do you have any questions about the special conditions there?
I had no comments.
Anybody have any comments?
Not me.
Does someone care to make a motion to approve the order of conditions for One Shore Drive?
I will move that we approve the order of conditions for One Shore Drive, map 78, parcel B10.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, now we're on to show cause hearings, starting with 754 Route 28.
You want to come on up, Rick, to the table or the podium, whichever you prefer?
That's fine.
And just state to the commission who you are, and if you want, I can start and kind of describe how we've got to where we are, or you may.
Yeah, that would be good if you did.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So Rick Concordia, 754 Main Street, Harwich, Casual Designs. I'd like to say first that I apologize that we haven't not, taken care of all these issues, but I assure you, we did not realize from 20 years ago that we had open orders of compliance. We had no idea. The builder that we used on the initial project kind of left us hanging there unbeknownst to us as far as getting signed off on the 3 orders of conditions that we weren't compliant with. We did take care of that, it just was never signed off on. So when we were trying to build a structure recently, that's how this all came about. I had someone in my behalf, John Shea, come in and talk to everyone trying to get a permit, and then this came about, and we were just totally unaware. So I just wanted to put that out there because it's not like we were doing that on purpose. We just did not know that we were not compliant way back when,
Okay, thank you. Amy?
Yeah, so this spring, a request for a certificate of compliance came in, and that had been requested 20 some odd years ago as well, well before my time here. We do have record of a non-compliance letter being issued at that time, but that was a very long time ago. So here we are now, and when we got the request for certificate of compliance, Melissa, the assistant agent, went out to the site and discovered a number of things that were not as per the permit and had never gotten permitted. So we issued an as-built plan, had been supplied, which was very helpful, comparing what's there now to what we approved. Melissa and Rick has gotten this plan, created this plan, which is in your Dropbox, that shows the things that were pre-existing and the things that are new in yellow, which are things that were not covered by the permit. So the plan here is a little bit hard to see, but this line up on the north side here is your resource area. This is your 50-foot, and this is your 100-foot buffer zone. So pre-existing on the site were the main store, the garage, the shed, and the barn. Things that were not approved were this big tent, which Rick and I met last week or the week before. We went over all of this in preparation for tonight. That tent has been removed back there. There were 3 tents in back of the main store. I saw that there's 2 right now. One of those is in the 50-foot buffer. And there's a shell area with boxes and boats. There's still shell. We'll tell Rick tonight what you want to do with that, but he has removed all of the boxes, boats, and materials from that area. And there is an area when you drive in that is a new kind of a shell parking area. And this is an area that we would, actually, I have to check. That's only flood zone. That's not in buffer zone to wetlands. So likely with minor permit would have been something that we would have permitted there. So really now is the time to chat about where you'd like to see this go. I did tell Rick that anything within the 50, so this tent, the big one, that is gone. And you only saw 2 tents out there today. The 3rd tent is gone. Those were all in the 50-foot and have gone. This shell area is still here, and these tents are still here. So if you want to give, so in order to get a certificate of compliance, those things would need to be addressed either by direction of the commission to seek a permit for some of these things like that shell parking area, or if things need to get removed and revegetated. And I would recommend that we do a time, kind of give Mr. Concordia a time frame to do that.
Okay, I actually have a question, which is, I think we noticed that behind the fence there, where the big tent was, that was paved.
That's actually not where the tent was, it was my mistake. That,
No?
maybe.
Next to the barn?
It was,
Next to the thing
I'm
marked-
sorry, it was next to the barn. Yes, I apologize, I was looking at it wrong. It hasn't been paved for a long time.
Yeah, that, when we purchased the building, that was there.
Okay,
They used to store furniture back there with wide open, so
okay.
that's why we put the tent.
I would agree with that.
Yep.
Okay, well, let's start with questions or comments, Wayne.
How far, another question I have, how far from the creek over there is this, all this stuff?
That doesn't actually, that's a good,
Doesn't
hold
show.
on.
There's a
I
creek
have an
that runs
existing.
from way up back there, runs out
I know.
underneath the road into the
Andrews
harbor.
River, Andrews River.
That's right. And wouldn't that fall under the Rivers Act?
It does, but I think he might be
Far
just
enough away?
outside the 200-foot buffer, to be honest,
Okay.
to that creek. All right, well, it actually shows on his original plan. And it does cut through that, that parking area
Yeah, that's.
here.
yeah.
So there's the 200, which is not a huge deal, but it's just a regulatory area. So your 200-foot, we have 200 feet jurisdiction from the creek landward. And your parking area on the west side of your building does cut into that, as would the shell area behind your garage there. So.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only comment I had.
Okay, thank you, Alan.
None, no.
I have no additional comments.
Nothing additional.
I guess a little more clarification. So the Riverfront Act was valid in 2000? The Riverfront Act was valid in 2000, was it?
Rivers Act came in 96.
96, okay. So, so was anything within the 50-foot buffer from the creek, or is we just talking about?
Not the creek,
Yeah.
from the top of Coastal Bank in the rear of the property.
Okay, so that kind of speaks to what you might want to seek to remove, if nothing is in a 50-foot buffer to the creek. Is it in the 50 to 100-foot buffer to the creek, or just floods?
Not the creek. So again, it's within the top of Coastal Bank to a ditch, which is not part of, but it is part of the salt marsh in the back of the property.
I got you.
So the things that are in the, technically in the 50 were that big tent, which is no longer there, and this little tent here. And then the 50 to 100 is this shell area here, 2 other tents. Yeah, and then this gravel area, gravel and shell area is flood zone and outer part of the 200-foot riverfront area.
So I guess I'm interested in your recommendation, Amy, if we want after-the-fact approval for structures in the 50 to 100, or can you not put things there because of the Riverfront Act?
Well, those wouldn't have, so the tents, these are not within the 200.
Okay.
This is not in the 200. The river goes like, so the river's over here. The river goes like this. So the only thing that's in the 200 is this gravel stone area, which is pervious surface, which would be allowable. Because before what was there, correct me if I'm wrong, was really just kind of a grass, but sparse grass.
Yeah.
And the same thing kind of back here, sparse ground cover where the shell and where the boxes and stuff were.
It's insane, yeah.
So my recommendation would be, I mean, he already got those tents out, which is great. If you wanted to, you could apply for a permit with us to keep these other 2 tents, or you'd have to remove them.
In the backyard area.
In the backyard
there's
area.
2 tents now, yeah.
Yep,
One was removed.
one was
2 more.
removed. The
Yep.
2 other ones are still jurisdictional.
Okay.
So you could either apply with probably an RDA for those, or you could just remove them, and we would, we would give you a time frame for that, and we'd be done with that.
Okay.
I'm kind of indifferent, to be honest, about this, keeping this shell or a Cape Cod grass mix here in the back, in the 50 to 100 foot buffer, as long as it doesn't become a storage area, again, for a lot of materials.
Yeah.
And then, so I would recommend either an RDA for the 2 tents and this additional driveway area here, or if you don't want to have to file for those things, then you agree to remove them.
Okay.
It's not a hugely arduous process to get a permit for those things, I don't believe.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
And I mean, and we only talked, last week or the week before, and they've already done a lot of work to try to get this.
Yeah.
There's been some time, but I think they're making quick headway here.
And we have leased a off-site warehouse that
Correct.
we're moving
Great.
in on October 1st, so a lot of that, gonna free up the problem that we had with storage.
Okay.
Anything else, Brad?
No, I'm fine with the recommendation.
So I would recommend either applying or removing within 60 days.
So, can I just ask, were you planning, you already have made arrangements to remove whatever you had in those tents to an off-site storage place?
Yeah, we did, yep.
So, what is your pleasure here? Do you want to just leave it that way and remove the tents, and then there will be no need for further filing? Or are you thinking you want to keep those and use them, in which case you'd have to file?
I mean, the more storage we have, the better, but, I mean, our mind was set on removing those. They're not the most beautiful structures, in the grand scheme of things, so, I mean, I have no problem removing them. They serve their course now that we've got off-site storage. We can live without them.
You'd still have to file for that expansion of parking area.
Yeah. Mhm.
So. And I would assume that you do want to keep that. That's very helpful for you.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I think that would be permissible with application. Well, I would recommend 60 days. So actually, let's just do 2 months, or not 2 months. Yeah, 2 months. All right.
So,
Not that late here.
where does that bring us?
Let's do November 20. It's September 21st. Let's just do November 21st. And just to stay, I have your email, so I can send you the application.
Okay.
Get going on that, either for just the driveway or if you do want to keep the tents. Okay?
Mhm.
November.
And the shells in the back?
That would be up, I said, to me, it's whether it's shell or a grass seed mix, I don't particularly have, I don't have a preference. It's in the 50 to 100. What's the commission's pleasure on that?
Well, my feeling is that if it's grass, it's less likely that more furniture isn't gonna end up on top of it. So I'd be more inclined to request that it be replanted with grass. Because I'm sure you're always unloading trucks with inventory that you have to do something with, and you're not gonna wanna put clean new stuff on grass. You might be more inclined to put it on shells. That's my thought. I don't know what other people think.
Regarding that, at this point, the soil conditions there are stable. The new grass is gonna take a while to stabilize. Given the location, to me, it would be advantageous to leave it as it is.
You also can't irrigate it right now,
Yeah,
so
that's
you have
true.
to hand water.
Has it been there for a long time, shells?
Yeah, I mean, it was sand and, dirt, and we were tracking stuff into everywhere, and we just said, it'll be cleaner if we do that. I mean, we're walking back.
The shell is thicker up by the buildings. Down in that 50 to 100, it's a mix of dirt and shell.
Yeah, it strikes me as an oversight. It's not really one of those compliance issues where we would want to see mitigation. So I think I'm 50-50 on that.
I guess it would growth take over what's there ultimately.
Without adding more shell.
Jim?
Yeah, I think I agree with Mark, and I think I'd be comfortable with just leaving the shells.
Let it naturalize.
Yeah.
So do we need a motion here, Amy, or?
I think it would be good to have a motion to have Mr. Concordia either remove the tents and that new parking area by November 21st or file an RDA with the commission to keep it.
And also include an RDA an after-the-fact RDA for the parking area as well?
I think we could do it all as one.
Yeah.
One application, yep. The additional parking area on the west side, which is shell and gravel now, and the 2 tents if you wish to keep them there. Okay?
Does the motion need to close the enforcement order as well? Or is that?
No, this will become part of it. It'll essentially get extended to give you 2 months to do this.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'd be glad to, but I don't know how to word it.
I was thinking the same
Yeah,
thing.
the same
I
thing,
feel
yeah.
the same, Mark. That's why I didn't volunteer.
I can say it and you could say,
Let it rip.
I agree to that.
Yeah, Amy, would you like to give a recommended motion and then we could?
I suggest you make a motion to give Mr. Concordia until November 21st to file an RDA for unauthorized activities within the 50 to 100-foot buffer zone, or to remove the additional driveway area and 2 tents
Okay,
in
I
question.
will make a motion to go along with, to continue with what Amy just said.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion?
You could say so moved, Jim.
So moved. Whatever.
So hearing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous.
All right,
Here we go. Thank
Alright.
you, sir.
Thank you so much.
all right, we'll be in touch.
Okay, appreciate it.
Okay, so next would be 16 Old Coach Lane.
Hello.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Hunton. I'm here on behalf of Natalia Wallace, and Natalia's here in person, and she's happy to also answer any specific questions you will have, but I'm here to represent her tonight from Reuben and Redmond.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is Natalia. Natalia is the owner of 16 Old Coach Lane. It was brought to the attention of the Conservation Department that there may be some activities that occurred on the site that didn't have permits for. So myself and the assistant agent Melissa came out to the site a couple of weeks ago. When we got to the site, Natalia was there. We asked to come onto the property after saying who we were. Natalia agreed to have us on the property and showed us around. So backing up a little bit, she purchased the property in July of last year and has done a little bit of work to it since. And of concern is a couple of things. So the house, or most of the property is within the 100-foot buffer zone to a wetland. One of the major activities was hand digging, it seems, of material at the edge of and in, this is Grass Pond, a shallow pond in the northeast part of town. Bagging said material and starting to remove, bring that material to be disposed of. And after I finish, Natalia will certainly, and Michelle can certainly tell you why they thought this was a good idea, etc. But you know, as I explained on the site, that excavation in a wetland or near a wetland is not permitted unless there is a permit, and it's hard to get permits for such types of activities. The pathway down to the water had been improved with some gravel. The area at the top of the slope, which was still within our 50-foot no disturb zone to the pond, where it previously had been just grasses and some moss, as Natalia had told me, that area had been covered with some stone and some mulch. And there were for some formal seating areas, as well as some retaining walls, some of which were new and some which were older or had been replaced, evidently, where there previously had been some. Let's see. And so there's a walkout basement. There's a deck above, and underneath that deck, which part of that's in the 50-foot buffer, was just gravel before, and now it is a formal deck. So we talked about this. I sent an email. Then I sent an enforcement letter to the address that you gave me. We did levy fines, and it's up to the commission tonight if you wanted to uphold, decrease, or anyway, or alter that fine schedule that was sent. I got a call from Natalia's attorney, Michelle Hutton, who was on the call with us today. Let's see. My recommendation is to have Ms. Wallace remove the stone on the slope by hand, put down biodegradable erosion control matting, and seed with a native grass mix this fall. We can discuss the stone and the new patio and around the fire pit area as well, as this is in the 100-foot buffer. And then a restoration plan for the buffer zone and pond shore, and a deadline for that. I guess with that, I would leave it up to Natalia and Michelle if you'd like to comment.
Yes, I have a few comments. Thank you, Amy, for speaking with me last week as well. I just wanted to first state that Natalia wasn't aware of the requirements to file for an NOI or an RDA for the minimal work that she did. So it wasn't intentional, and she apologizes for that. But we're here to, work with the commission and try to resolve the concerns the commission has, and, see what, may be able to remain for what she has done. The first thing I just wanted to address, the simplest thing is the fire pit and the chairs. It is removable. It's not a permanent fire pit. It's just sort of a small one that can be removed, and the chairs that are there surrounding it are also easily removable. So I didn't really see that as, as a violation, because it's not really a permanent, structure that's in the 50-foot buffer zone. But, we're happy to remove that and, possibly move it down there when it's used, because it is removable. That part of it isn't permanent. And then in terms of the deck, so as Amy said, that's accurate. There was crushed stone under the footprint of the second floor deck, and now in that area of crushed stone, there's wood planking, and Natalia would like to keep that there, so we would request that we have permission to file an after the fact notice of intent, try to get permission for that. It doesn't, from what I understand, I haven't been to the property yet, but from what I understand, it doesn't go beyond the footprint of the second floor deck, so we think that could be permittable. Also, with regard to the pathway, the stone pathway, the access path to the pond, where Natalia added the stone, I also wanted to point out that none of that, again, is permanent. It's just stone. There's no cement or concrete or anything like that. She would like to keep that if possible. I was just took a look at your regulations with regard to the 50-foot wetland areas, and I do see that access pathways to water, if they're no more than 4 feet in width, may be allowable by the commission. So that's something also that we would like to request possibly be permitted, you know, either whether it's an RDA filing or a notice of intent filing, to try to have an access pathway in a way that's the commission feels comfortable with, and we can, you know, discuss that further and work with the commission on that. In terms of the regarding the pond and any work done in the pond, Natalia has told me that she removed the pond area is very, from what I understand, mucky and kind of cloudy, and she removed some of the mud along the shoreline of the pond to help, thinking it would help improve the water quality. Again, obviously, she wasn't aware that she needed a permit to do any of that work, and that's something that, you know, we're happy to work with, do some sort of restoration plan and figure out a way to maybe even do something that benefits the pond, and also, you know, maybe in the same time address some of Natalia's concerns with the water quality there. You know, something we haven't looked at specifically yet. We need to get a consultant on board and, you know, dig into this further. And I also would request that the commission not levy the fines at this point, because we're trying to, you know, she'd like to work with the commission and hopefully resolve this, and none of this was really intentional at all. So I'm just curious as to the commission's thoughts as to the process in terms of an after the fact NOI and what, you know, makes sense to do going forward.
Do you?
Okay.
Natalia, if you have anything to add, feel free to do so.
Oh no, I'm just too intimidated to see all of you guys. That's what I have you. Thank you, Amy.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
No, if you have questions, I'll be happy to.
Commissioners have an opportunity to comment or ask questions.
Yeah, I would ask, I know that you rent the property does get rented out, so we didn't go to the site today because I wasn't, when I take the commission on a tour of all of the stuff we talked about tonight. But I would like to arrange with you a time where they could come out and view it, so they could see what we're talking about here. And that might be a better, the next course, and put this on at the next meeting, but have you work out, so we can work out a time for them to come see and then talk about this a little bit farther. We do allow access to the water, but typically not with a gravel path, typically something with just dirt, or if the slope is steep, potentially staircase or timbers set in the grade to break up the grade, but stone typically not, because that could easily erode and migrate. It's a steep slope down into the water, which we wouldn't want. And then...
Can I have a question there, because I'm a little confused?
Yeah.
So that path that I put with the pebble, with the stones,
yeah,
that doesn't go to the water?
It goes pretty close to the water, down the hill.
No,
towards
because
the pond.
people cannot go down. It's a very scary thing to go down. So the water access is the one that always exists,
Yeah.
that is by the shed?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because the access is by the shed, and that was exactly the same way when we got it. So the little path that you see is it was just the little stones, but there's no way to go to the water there.
Yeah.
It is, but it's
Well,
kind
we
of
did.
nervous.
We went, yeah, Melissa
Yes,
went down it
but
to
it's
take the
kind of
photos.
scary, isn't it?
I thought that was the way that people were walking down, and honestly, I think your renters, I think people would walk down that.
That is a good point.
Yeah.
But I was not
So,
intending that.
I think we should do a site inspection. For the commission to all come out and take a look at this with you. Michelle, you'd of course be welcome if you wanted to. And go for there. Maybe hold, the fines are there, but maybe just kind of hold off on that. Sorry we didn't get you out there before this meeting, but I think you need to see it in person.
Right.
Shouldn't this require a plan showing what the violations are and what the proposed work is and whatnot?
Not at this point.
As far as, well, we don't know if anything could be potentially approved there. I do have a site plan that shows, the septic in the house back when it was built in the 80s, and there's been no permit since for new things. So we can extrapolate off of that plan what's there. We could do something similar to what we just did with Mr. Concordia. I think that is feasible without having like an as-built site plan done at this point by an engineer.
Yeah.
I think
We go along with that.
I just had a question. Is her address Old Coach Lane, or is it
Old Coach.
Old Lantern Lane?
Coach.
Coach, okay. I just can't find it on the
Lane.
map.
It's
It
also
doesn't,
Pleasant Bay or
No,
Pleasant-
I know the neighborhood, here, but they have it listed as Old Lantern Lane.
Oh,
So I just.
it's Old Coach.
Okay.
Won't believe everything Google tells you.
Well, no, it's Howard's Maps, that's the only road, that's the only house up against Grassy Pond there,
So, other questions or comments? Stan?
I'd like to make a comments. One is, I agree with Amy, we haven't gotten a chance to see the property, so I think that's important to determine all this, but two comments. One is that things were done without knowledge of needing permits and whatnot, and that's not an excuse. I mean, we've had other properties in the past where things are being done without proper knowledge of the rules, and that's not our responsibility, it's the owner's responsibility. The other comment is I'm hearing things without seeing this, things that were being done in the 50-foot buffer that might be approved. In my own opinion, we have very strict consideration of not doing anything within the 50-foot buffer. So that's all I'd like to say at this point.
Yeah, really nothing additional until I see the site. I agree with Amy's approach on how to move forward. I think it's pretty important to see what's been done in 0 to 50, and then probably have after the fact authorizations for things done in 50 to 100. That's probably the way it needs to go.
I'd really, I didn't go down to Melissa went down to the edge of the water. I stayed up and I spoke with Natalia. I want to go down and take a better look at the pond edge and see if there's room for replanting or what kind of should be done, so I could better advise you about that. So I want to take that opportunity when we're out with the commission to be able to go down there and take a better look. And so I can try to arrange a site visit, but maybe we can, not everybody on the commission can always go at the exact same time, but I don't want to intrude on your renters or anybody else, so maybe we can try to work out 1 or 2 times where it would be okay for people to go look. Is that feasible, Michelle, you think?
Yeah, that sounds good. I would definitely like to be present at the site visit, so if we could work out
We'll
a
try to
time.
get as many as possible, like, we'll try to get everybody at one time. I'd send out an email tomorrow.
Question for Amy, do you think this is heading towards an after-the-fact NOI or RDA? Is it too soon to say?
It's too soon to say.
All right, so getting a plan would be good, and I guess we have to wait for that, but
Yeah.
seeing 50 and 100-foot line and knowing what was done would be really good.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, that would be our plan, if we were if the commission, is agreeable to us moving forward with an RDA or after the fact RDA or NOI, we would need to have some sort of plan.
I think in the short term, I think we'll need to talk on site about stabilization of some of the steeper slopes, specifically going into the fall time, where it was just kind of dirt and stone, and that's that steep hillside. Is just to make sure that's stable for the time being as we head into the winter months. Okay.
So, Amy, given the state of the weather,
Yeah.
how are you thinking that's gonna work? I mean, grass seed can be put down, but if there's no water,
I'm thinking erosion control, like, let's go to the site. I'm thinking maybe sometime later next week, if possible, but I will send you an email and see what's works for you. I'm thinking of erosion control matting on one of those slopes, like a biodegradable jute mat to hold things temporarily. Given the state that we're in a drought and we rarely get much rain, I don't know if grass seed would even make any sense.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
So let's tentatively put this on the agenda for next time, which is 2 weeks from now, which is October 5th. Let's put that on as a placeholder, and sometime next week, let's try to get out to the property.
Perfect.
Okay.
And I'll have to advertise, like, I'll post an agenda if we have a quorum, so.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for coming in.
Thank you, all of you.
So where?
I'll be in touch tomorrow via email to you and Michelle.
Thank you so much.
Great,
Have a good
thank
night.
you. Need it.
Okay, going back,
We did one short
We
drive, right? And
did
we
one shore, we did 2
Harbor Way.
certs. So we gotta go back to Ben and Rita Stevens
Right.
and Mark Russo and the rest of the certs. I just go in order with Ben Stevens first?
Might as well. It doesn't look like there's anyone here to.
No. So, this was the after-the-fact permit to convert a porch into a sunroom. Install a roof, a pergola over another portion of the patio, and install solar panels. It is, I would consider, in compliance. The hardscape is in compliance. The plantings have been in for several growing seasons. The yard is being watered, but I don't think it's being treated. There's a lot of other things other than grass coming up in the yard, so I don't think he's treating it. And that was a question last time. I noticed there was a very discernible difference in what the lawn looked like compared to, I mean, it's being watered, but it's got clover, it's got weeds, whereas before it seemed to be more of a monoculture there. Irrigation, that's more of a water department issue of watering during the drought. But I did notice that he has a low landscaping fence, maybe 18 to 24 inches high. It's wire. This was after, he removed all the other fence. I'm guessing it's to keep a small dog in. It's not keeping any wildlife out. And that was our main issue before with any fencing, was that, wildlife could not freely pass, and it was a structure right at the top of a coastal bank in a resource area. So while it is a small wire, like landscape type fence right at that top of bank. But I don't see it as I don't see it as a structure necessarily. And I don't think it's a negative impact to the resource area. So I went back and forth on that one for a while. So I would recommend, I rescind some of the things I have in my review here, and I would recommend a certificate of compliance for it. It is minor. I'm trying. I'm trying to not nitpick. I did in my summary, but.
So, the order of conditions specifies no fence, or does it? Is that specific in the order of conditions?
Let me look. Well, it specified that he could keep the fence on the south side, but he had to remove the fence, I know this for a fact, on the north side. So remember we talked about, what he put in versus what was there. Let's see.
So my concern about this
Yeah.
is that once no one is looking anymore, a different fence will be there. And/or if the intent really is that the property is gonna change hands sometime in the not-too-distant future, that someone else will come along and say, oh, there's a fence there, I'm gonna put a different fence there. So, I agree that I don't particularly wanna be thinking about this property anymore, and it's a minor thing. So, if the order of conditions is on the deed and it says there's no fence there, maybe that's enough.
Well, the order of conditions doesn't say anything about the fence, because we were just talking at the time about the structures, and it was after that was done that we found out the fence was there. It's in the enforcement order. It does say fence along northern property line to be removed by October 6, 2021, which was done. He had a different wire fence, if you recall, along the top of the bank. Does say in the enforcement order, wire fence to be removed.
Yeah, so for me,
Did he remove it?
the fence
No, he
should,
put a new one in.
the fence should
Small
be
one.
removed. The search should not be given till the fence is removed. I don't mind the idea of not having a fine, just to kind of make this go smoother, but I think that the fence is an issue, it was discussed extensively, it was to be removed, and he put a different one in. And it is atop the coastal bank, no disturbs.
Yeah.
I agree with Brad.
Any other comments?
You may wanna keep the fine, I mean, it's up, you know, that's just my thoughts, as to how to make this go away, you know.
Yeah, well,
Well, I definitely agree with Brad about, you know, the fence should be removed, or without the compliance, and like you say, Amy, if you don't wanna nitpick about a fine, then
Fine.
I agree with Brad.
I'm flexible. This is, I mean, he clearly knew he had to take the fence out. He took the fence out and applied for this, and there's something there now.
And it kinda goes along with what you're saying, John. I mean, if a fence is there, we'll get a situation, well, I didn't know. If say we were to get a new owner or something, well, there was a fence here, somebody's gonna.
Well, it's kind of what happened, actually, to that point. It's what happened here. He bought that place with that old wire fence that was up there prior, and then improved it.
Right, and that.
I can see that.
That goes along with what John's saying, you know.
Yeah, I get it. Stay consistent, remove it.
so what is required here? I mean, if that's where we're going, we need to make a motion to what, deny the cert?
I would say let's put it on hold. That way, they doesn't have to refile, there's no new, let's put it on hold till the next meeting. I will convey with Mr. Stevens that he's got to remove that wire fence. And if he doesn't do so by that next meeting, then we'll talk enforcement. But we'll give him a couple weeks. I mean, it's not gonna take much to take it out.
So we don't need a motion or anything here, we'll do that.
No.
Anybody else have anything to say? Okay. Let's move on to,
All right, so hold on one second.
205 Salt River Lane.
Well, the rest of these I can
F4,
recommend
parcel
certs of
A1B3.
compliance for. So this was shorefront protection. It was replacement of fiber rolls with a stone revetment, rough face revetment, and a lot of some, regrading of the coastal bank. Reduction of hardscape in the on the top of coastal bank. The work's been done. The plantings had taken a little while to establish. The bank looks fantastic. It's a lot more species diversity. Prior it was good. It was a lot of oak saplings that was on the site, but there was really no diversity to it. Now there's a mix of ground cover shrubs and a couple trees on there. The only thing that didn't take, they were to install 2 small marsh pillows, which, to be honest, I think both of them together were the size of this table. They were to install it along a portion of marsh And I just don't think that area, hi Don, I didn't realize you were still here, I'm sorry.
Through the chair, no problem. If you want me to share the screen with the as-built, I can do
Sure, that would be great.
All right, let me,
Matt, can he share his screen, please?
Yes, we don't.
So there's a small section of Marsh Pillows that didn't take it, The originally approved plan had only one set of stairs, but they later, just to let you know, they later came back and got permission for the second in-ground set of stairs. And I would recommend assertive compliance with ongoing conditions regarding no fertilizers and chemicals.
through the chair, can you see the as-built plan?
Yep, and they have it too.
Yeah, these were the Marsh Pillows that Amy was referring to. It looks like this is right after this nice salt marsh has grown really well. It didn't take very well. There is some sprigs left in it, but I think it's right at the zone where the velocity of the Herring River changes. And you get that contour, this contour just starts to drop in. So I think we're probably never gonna be able to get that salt marsh other than its own natural expansion due to the river speed that's in this location. But Amy's right, this vegetation now is really doing great. It's healthy, it's well protected due to the revetment. There's no scour going on. It looks good. The fiber rolls, they'll probably need to be covered once in a while, but they seem to be doing well without any attention. And the area of mitigation was the 950 square feet and the patio walkways that he redid in this location, just because the whole area was slumping due to the loss of material on the bank. So the whole backyard was falling away in terms of grade into the river. But we've got quite a bit more square footage of mitigation for the replacement of the patio and walkway that's in this location here. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
There's really very little, before there was a lot of top-down erosion, like Don was saying. Now we saw one or two little spots about a month ago. We went out there and very minor. The owner's gonna address them. And kind of a very good thing is that really there is no end scour that we've noticed at this property, which is kind of not sometimes unusual for revetments. There is a little bit, but there always was to the east of the staircase. There always was kind of a hole. The fiber rolls have helped soften that. So I would recommend assert for this one.
Any comments? Yeah.
Yeah, Amy, so this one came with an order, special order for a benchmark for the revetment. I don't see that in the as-built. What's the status of the benchmark?
Oh, boy.
Don, can you address that?
Good one. We can amend that. We can put a benchmark right on the dock. If that's okay.
Yeah, there
because
wasn't
we've already
one-
shot the dock. Yeah.
There wasn't one drilled?
I don't know. I have to verify that, Amy. I don't know. Well,
Hold on, let me check the order real quick.
There was a lot of discussion with the commission, I think, with this one. It was a fair amount of operation to Coastal Bank to put this revetment in. And so we were concerned about making sure the revetment went in as designed, as well as the elevation was where it was supposed to be. So we asked for a benchmark to put in.
Hang on. Yeah, it does say the as-built is to show benchmarks and survey points, Don.
okay. All right, we'll amend the plan.
So let's table this?
Sure.
I think
So when they say benchmark, and Travis, do you want them drilled in one of the rocks? Is that the idea?
Whatever makes most sense to be able to monitor elevation.
That's what we talked about,
Usually it's in rocks,
yeah,
not the dock, because the dock can change. Dock structures can change.
we talked about.
Yeah, sure, no problem. we can do that.
It actually does say benchmark shall be installed in the wall with associated
okay.
survey points to monitor salt marsh and coastal bank.
Okay. We will
Good catch.
certainly take care of that and
Good
get it on the
catch.
plan and then come back. Next time, I'm just gonna table it and we'll come in next time.
Yeah, when you provide that to me, I'll put you back on an agenda.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Let's see.
Okay?
Okay,
Are you good, Don?
Yes, we're all set. Thank
All
you.
right.
I'm just trying to unshare my screen. But I'll just exit and I'll see you next time.
All right, thanks.
thank you, Don.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so next here we have Ken Wheeler, 10 Harbor Road, map 8, parcel S1, SE 32-1024, septic replacement.
The permit was granted in '94. It was installed per the plan. They just never closed it out. But they did with the Board of Health. So I checked the as-built, and it was built accordingly. They need to get the permit off the deed. I'm assuming it's a it is a real estate transfer. And I would recommend a certificate of compliance for 10 Harbor Road.
Okay, I'll move to issue a certificate of compliance for 10 Harbor Road.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Next is Richard and Kathy Bosky, 2 Lakeshore Drive, map 110, parcel A2.
This is on Seymour Pond, and some of you may recall they came in front of us for construction of a new garage and addition, and we kind of found that their patios or decking along the pond shore and walkway had been added without any permit. So what we had them do was remove some of the decking and walkway, put the deck by the water back to the footprint it had previously been, and do mitigation plantings in addition to approve the garage and addition. All work is complete. The decks are now in compliance. The plantings have been in for 2 years and are doing well. They look really good, actually. Mr. Bosky, at the time, I think, was a little hesitant for all of this, and he actually really enjoys how the native plants look and has commented how much more wildlife he has, and said, they never really used that raised boardwalk that was along the top, and they don't miss it. I would recommend approval with ongoing condition prohibiting fertilizers and other chemicals.
When did it come out, Amy? It's still shown on Google Earth.
Google Earth is back from 2018 usually.
No, this is October 21 it's showing.
Oh, well, it's been gone. I was there this summer. Gone.
Okay.
And the plantings are doing very well. So I do have photos. I didn't include them, but I do have photos to that extent.
The most recent is October 21.
Really? Wow.
So, but they got it out, okay.
It's out.
Okay.
The plants are doing great.
All right.
Okay, anything else? Anyone else?
I recommend we approve the certificate of compliance for 3 Lakeshore Drive.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. So finally, Paul Vassal, 10 Notre Dame, map 21, parcel X3-2, SE 32-1436, septic installation.
The work was never done and the lot is still vacant, so I would recommend a cert of compliance for work not done so we can close the permit out.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, so we're down to discussion, possible vote, possible Conservation Department CPC application.
So I mentioned to the people who were on the site visits today, been trying to get together a CPC application to put a well at the community gardens, because it's on town water. I looked at this a couple of years ago. It did not get supportive. At that time, I had it in my capital plan and not for community preservation. Back then, they estimated a well would cost 20 grand. I needed a new estimate. I've reached out to 3 companies. I heard back from one. I need to get a revised estimate based on water usage there. They want gallons per minute, but I can't really get that. I can get how many gallons I use in a season, but the usage is so dependent on time of year and season out there. I don't exactly know, and neither does our maintenance person, know how to get a flow rate. The reason we need that is because we need to determine what type of well we really need out there. So if anybody has local expertise and would like to help, I'd love it, but I'm not prepared at this time, and CPC applications I think are due, what, the 3rd?
October 3rd, yes.
I don't want to go in front of CPC with a partial application. So I think I might table this for a year, but just to let you know, our water expenditures for the community gardens are about $4,000 a year.
Whoa.
Right now, I mean, in a drought year. It ranges between 3 and 4. It's 100, the plots are 100 plots. They cost, well, we usually get about 80 plots filled. We charge $40 a plot. The revenue from the gardens goes into the general fund, but the water budget to pay for the water at the gardens comes out of my budget.
Well, that doesn't seem right.
How do we change
That's another thing.
What the hell?
Well, that's another thing, but I want to explore a little bit more, because some people have told me it would be cost effective to get a well.
Sure it would.
And I mean, a short-term expense, a larger expense, but a longer-term benefit, while people in the maintenance field and who work for the town say that it's really not going to be that much of a savings to, if I have to maintain, we have to maintain the lines anyway.
Right.
But if a pump goes or something like that. So I know the town is gonna wanna know what the cost benefit is gonna be here.
You get a meter down there, right? You must have.
Yeah, we have a meter.
Yeah, you can't, I mean, the gallonage that goes through it in the course of a year, that should give them.
I guess you could do that for gallon per minute, but it is seasonal. I mean, we shut it down
Yeah, but I mean,
November
when you take
and
the
the,
overall gallonage, if that's what you use for a year, that should be able to satisfy somebody who wants to know how much you need.
Yeah, I mean, just
What the hell?
I gave
divide
him,
that by the amount of days in the growing season to come up with
I
some
gave
sort
him
of
that,
average.
so I gave him my water bills and the gallonage that was used, cause they do it by, what, 3 or 4 months here, right, in town?
Yeah,
So
probably.
from March to June, June to September, September to December are the bills that I get. So I gave them all those gallonages for those seasons, and that wasn't enough. So,
Would you send those to me?
I will, yep. Well, I'll send you those, and I'll send, if anybody wants to see the schematic of our irrigation lines, I'm sending that to Mark too. They're only buried 3 to 4 feet down. You have really high groundwater there,
Oh,
so it's
yeah.
not a deep well. We're not talking a
Got plenty
deep
of
well
water.
here.
Yeah, you got plenty of
We
water.
got plenty of water there. It's the only place we have water.
Who gave the estimate of $20,000 for a well?
That was a couple years ago. It was Desmond.
Desmond, really? Tom
You gotta
knows
put
what he's doing.
electricity in there and all that
So-
stuff too, right?
Question for somebody. Just one tap, watering one of those, how big are they?
The plots are 20 by 20.
One 400 square foot plot. What would you expect? I mean, it's like 2.5 gallons a minute? I mean, that's what they're looking for, like the total flow rate when, you know,
We have to estimate like that everybody could be using water at the same time, right? Or at least half using water at the same time.
well, reasonable flow rate out of a hose is something like a couple gallons per minute, right? I mean, if you're watering the garden.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on how
The
much
heads.
pipe and a whole bunch of factors into that, I mean, it could be 2 gallons a minute, it could be 10 gallons a minute. Anywhere in that range is realistic.
What are those sprinkler heads?
So
on
that's
the
just
bottom?
one way to
Rainbow
bound the
30,
problem
5 gallons
anyway.
per minute?
I don't know. It doesn't answer the question, but at least it's somewhere to start when you're.
If we can determine an average daily usage for the growing season, that, I mean, you can take that off the water bills, you can come up with a number with.
So I think we might be a little bit too late for this year, but I mean, are you supportive of, well, the concept of exploring that more as a cost savings to the town?
If the money's going into the general fund, then should the selectmen be paying for this well, or at least the town of Harwich versus your budget? That would make, I mean, what the hell, they, if they're getting the money,
Would make sense.
invest it back into the place.
Either that, or I would need some more money for the water bill. We should also, if they're not gonna give us next year a well, we should discuss raising the fees. Cause it is a bargain, even at 20 by 20 plot for $40, you get that, we till it for you, that's your water as well, and we do bring some compost down to the gardens. So for $40 for a season, I think that's a bargain.
Yeah, it is.
Is it
But it's still, the
But
next
still.
town, Springtown meeting, there should be an article in there to put a well in there.
Excuse me.
Let the
I
taxpayers
wanna do
pay
it at
for it.
CPC, I would rather do it for community preservation and not have to ask the voters at town meeting to spend more money on that for the general budget. I'd like to see it come out of CPC, or ask for CPC next year.
Well, just out of curiosity, over a period of years, the last big expense was laying the water lines that were in there, right? Do you have a number of that, what it was? Maybe a little?
That was
Yes?
not done by my department.
Okay.
I don't know where I don't know if it came out of DPW or where. to
So
do that.
Conscom didn't write the check for that?
No.
Find out who did and get them to write a check for a well.
That was probably around 2016.
Or the
Well,
water.
at the end of the day, if the general fund or somebody else is receiving the money that's being generated, we need to go to that source.
Absolutely.
Because there's been a history of revenue.
Right.
There's been a revenue stream for however many years that's been in existence.
Right.
It's been quite a while. I gotta believe that there had to be an accumulation of funds to compensate for that well.
Absolutely.
One
Even if it's a
doesn't
5-year payback.
offset the other, so that's the thing, like I said, it goes to two different, the general fund, we take in the money, it goes to the general fund, but my budget holds the water money. So there's a little disconnect there.
Excuse me, Amy, did you say the fee for each plot is $40 a year? Well, that, you're talking your $4,000
It's
right.
exact, right.
That's $40 a
So
year.
if we don't sell them all, we usually make between $3,000 and $4,000 a year, that's usually what water is. So, what we try to do is, we don't wanna be sinking money into this, but the town, we're not looking to make a lot of money for this. This is a nice thing that we provide to people in the town to be able to garden here. It's not supposed to be a revenue machine.
Right.
It's supposed to level fund.
I understand that, but you're saying you're doing the rototiller, that's being expensed through the town.
Oh, sorry, the tilling is an added expense on top of the water.
Yeah, that shouldn't come out of conservation
That
budget.
comes out of my budget.
It should.
No, so that's what
Oh,
I'm saying, and you're only getting $40 a year for a plot, and that's what the water on average is costing.
Yeah, we
so-
don't get anything, cause it doesn't
No,
come
I
back
know,
into
but
our
I'm saying
budget.
you should include your expense,
Yeah.
like you say, you're not trying to make a profit, but you should at least cover your expenses
Yep.
with what you're charging.
Yeah, and that's where we've been able to stay. This year, I'm nervous with how hot and dry it was.
Right.
Cause I haven't gotten my June to September bill yet. And that's gonna hurt. So, support, it sounds like you're supportive of me doing continued investigation to this.
Can we add other things in the CPC while you're investigating that? So
Well,
that we can
it's
get like a
probably
gate
too
at the
late
Heron
for this
River?
year, yeah.
Right, because now that the heron fishery is gonna be opened up to harvest, this would be it's maybe now?
Well, it's got a couple more steps to go,
Oh.
but the selectmen board voted to support it.
It's looking good.
Looking good.
But yeah, conservation at any year that's where we got some money for the land management that we have been doing. We can certainly always put in CPC application.
I would sit here tonight and say, I wanna help, do it all I can to help get some of these articles put forth and do it, instead of, we always just spin our wheels and.
We
let's
do have
just-
money for a
let's get
gate.
it done.
Still out of the CPC. We would have enough money for a gate at the entrance to the Bell's Neck.
When's it going up?
Well, we would have, we have a few $1,000s left in that 20,000 lump that CPC granted us for
So-
land management, that I was gonna put gates that, potentially at Robbins Fund, and we didn't do gates, we did more fencing, but we have money. And Bell's Neck was partially purchased with land grant funds, so we can use CPC money for that.
So, on the topic of CPC, if you have ideas of what you would like to see CPC money spent on that has to do with conservation, I encourage two things. One is that we put an agenda item like in late spring or early summer
Yeah.
next year.
Right.
So that there's enough lead time to talk the things over, get proposals together, because, 10 days before the due date, it doesn't really work. And the other thing is that you go to the Town of Harwich CPC webpage, on the town's webpage, and read the material there about what CPC funds can be spent on.
What it covers? Well, that's good information, thank you, because then we can do that and plan for that.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So there's set pots every year that have to be used for set reasons, and they're things that they may not be covered in the general fund. We get a lot of work done in the town of Harwich by using CPC funds. Good things that we do for the community that otherwise we couldn't afford to do.
Right.
So,
But there are constraints
There
and
are
rules, and you
constraints.
have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
sort of
no, I
understand
understand,
those
I
things.
understand.
yeah, there's
While you
different,
think about
different pots.
what you might wanna do with that kind of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, why
Alright.
not have conservation, focus ideas come from this group?
They
Yeah,
should.
absolutely.
I think this year we got, between bylaw stuff and a few other things, other things got pushed.
Yeah.
But we can get back to that, and we do still have, I'm going to I have an update for CPC. I won't be at your meeting in October, cause I'll be on vacation, but I'm giving a written report, and I would like to be able to keep that we don't have 20,000 anymore, cause we've spent some, but I'd like to keep that line item open to continue to do good things.
Okay.
All right, at the last meeting, when I was present remotely, because I wasn't feeling well, did you approve the minutes of October 2nd?
Yes, we did.
Okay, so I haven't looked at the tape yet, so I'll just
I went after I saw this on the agenda, I thought,
I'll let Melissa know.
we did this, I actually talked to Melissa, and then I wasn't sure then, I wondered, what? So I went back and looked at the end of the tape, and we did vote on those minutes.
Because I left right when you were doing that. I
Yeah,
said, oh, you don't need me anymore, and she goes by my scribbles from the meeting. All right, well, that's all I've got.
Any other business coming before the commission?
Just
Alan?
more discussions that's been in the past. We've got the Main Street bogs, we've
Yeah.
got the surplus equipment, the bog at the reservoir, the pump house status, tearing that down. What else? I think that's two main topics that we need to focus on.
The management plan for,
The Heron River, yeah.
Pump house at Bell's Neck.
Did that 163 Sisson Road ever to get totally resolved? I've forgotten. By the fire station? The gentleman with all the knotweed?
He can't make, yes.
He has
Is
to
that all
plant,
done, or-
yeah, well, he has to plant this fall, so thank you for reminding me. I'll
Okay.
check in with him.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, let's check in. Pump house at the Bell's Neck, like the surplus equipment you're talking about, Alan?
Right.
So what is there to be done about that? I mean, we've talked about that in the past.
Town could sell it.
Gotta figure
So
out how to
do we
sell
need
it.
to take some affirmative action of some sort in order to get the town to sell it? Like vote to ask the town to sell it?
Deem it as surplus, and then that's how it gets
What?
sold.
It's already
How
been
does-
discussed with it, but we need to revisit it with administration.
I see, so they have to determine to surplus that stuff. Okay.
Probably worth 1 year's water bill.
Oh, maybe you can just post it on Craigslist.
There you go.
And,
Well, yeah, if we can get those
Thank you for
accomplished, that'd be
bringing
good, yeah.
All right, very good.
anything else?
Oh, we have our new AmeriCorps, as you saw, I think we're really low this year in numbers. We're very fortunate that we're getting somebody at all. So they'll be starting in October. I'm gonna have them 1 day a week. Robin is gonna have them, and Cemetery is gonna have one. I'm not sure if HCT has their typical member or not. But, we're gonna be doing a coast sweep beach cleanup. I believe Saturday, October 22nd, but I'll have more information on that. Go clean the beaches.
Okay,
If I may,
How's Skinnikid?
not great.
Channel.
Oh, the channel? I mean, I haven't been back over there since I wrote you and Heinz, guess Amy a note about
Yeah.
the head. Did you go over and?
You know, I'll be around next week doing
I don't-
Black's Pond.
I'll take a drive too, take a look down.
One of
Yeah.
those days, let's go over and take a look at it.
Let me know. I'll be around all week next week. I'd like to come over. I was only looking at it from the water and
Yeah.
I didn't wanna go over, private property there and look.
Mhm.
See, I've always been told that's an ancient way, and I almost brought it up
Which
earlier.
is, on which side?
Where the fish house, the old.
Yeah, but getting there from where? I mean, from the end of Skinnikid Lane or whatever that
Yes.
is? I see, okay.
I've
Well,
always,
it's probably not a big deal to walk over there, but
yeah,
I
Let me look
couldn't
at the
see
old
it.
books, just out of curiosity. We have the Book of the Ancient Ways.
right.
Fish house, is that the boathouse that was
remodeled?
Boathouse.
Yeah, yeah.
years ago?
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's a huge accumulation of brush and snagwood or whatever and vegetation actively, at this point, well, it's probably not much growth right now. There's huge growth of vegetation and a huge snag of, dead tree limbs and things right in front of there.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see the stream. Last winter, I could just go right over there in the kayak and see.
Monday afternoon, I'll go over there if you want,
Okay,
if you're around.
let me know. Text me or something.
Also, we talked a while ago about Herring River, cleaning that up from Great Western Road on and unclogging it. Is there any state help involved in something like that, Brad? You would know, I should think.
Yeah, well, we have that stream maintenance plan, which Amy put in the Dropbox. Take a look at that. If it's machine work, you need a restoration notice of intent. But I think, we're preparing the study for the Herring River now. We should include that section, at least some discussion on what should be done there,
There's gotta be an obstacle course for those poor herring trying to get up
In a
there.
dry year, the juveniles are moving past those mountains, they can get in all kinds of trouble that way.
Yeah,
Bound up and pinched.
yeah.
So, yeah, we should, I think it kind of ties into me with the reservoir plan, the Herring River study, all these things. Let's just get proactive in trying to,
Yeah.
button up some of these things.
Could we meet on a Saturday sometime, all of us? Well, I have to post a meeting, I guess. But park at Great Western Road at the river, walk up the river and take a good look at what's going on there because it's pretty bad.
So, the county has
Yeah, you
ARPA
can-
funds, and and some of that money is going to APCC, or potentially going to APCC to address issues with fresh water. It's mostly about ponds. I don't know whether upstream from a west reservoir would qualify for that. APCC is looking for support for for them getting ARPA funds to address issues with Cape freshwater ponds. Anybody here might look into, go to the APCC website or whatever and look into what they're doing or looking for along those lines.
I can call the director and ask him how he feels.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, it all goes into the West Reservoir. The
Right.
West Reservoir was shut down most of the summer.
I would like to see a restoration like Cold Brook, from the West Reservoir all the way up to the Mid-Cape Highway of that river. Because that's, I think that's what it's gonna need.
Yeah,
It's
that's
been neglected for so many years.
That's a notice of intent. I helped the town of Pembroke get a notice of intent to do dredging for herring in their Herring Brook.
Mhm.
And, it's not an impossible project, but, you know, you have to, it's a little bit of cost. You need plans, you gotta get the permits, and you have to hire the machine, you know. You heard the story about how Craig Williams remembers them using, putting a pump on a barge, that very section right there, and they would just run it up there and just dredge it out in the interest of keeping the water flowing for the bog irrigation. So, but they also were aware that it was helping the herring at the same time. So that used to happen.
I think that you should talk to maybe APCC, what's the director behind? Andrew Gottlieb, right. You could talk to him, but also talk to the freshwater people at the county. And because there's a bunch of people there who are concerned about the health of freshwater resources on Cape Cod. And there are ARPA funds, and I would talk to those people to look into whether there might be a way. And even if they don't have any suggestions for funding, you're making them aware of your concern, which is an important first step.
You could do handwork right now with this new policy that's out. And it sounds like a lot of work, but you could put a dent in that section if you had a dozen people. So
Well, you're gonna get a dozen
I don't
people.
know about that, yeah. All due respect.
we do a lot of this type of work, and it's amazing what we've done. In Braintree, we cut through a frag patch that was so thick for a quarter mile, and we just established a channel. Is it sustainable? Probably not, you know, because it's gonna keep growing back. But either way, you know, let's just come up with ideas, and AmeriCorps can help out a lot.
Yeah, get it done.
In the end, it's probably a
Get it
notice of
done.
intent for mechanical work.
See, what happened is that when the town bought all that stuff, the management went away under osmosis of conservation. Leave it alone, don't touch it. When it was privately owned, bogs were run, dams were there, boards were pulled, water was flowing, it was cutting through and keeping it active. Now it's just stale and doing nothing.
Well, here's the other thing too, we're sucking our groundwater like we've never had in the past, so that means surface flows are reduced.
Right.
So that's my biggest concern, is where we're heading with all this water use. We don't have surface flows, I see it all over the Cape. And so that's a real concern, and those plants are gonna do what they do, they're gonna encroach on that channel. And so, you know, same comments I had for Cold Brook, you know, it's really something to pay attention to. You know, you hate to have that maintenance, but it's almost essential.
You gotta do it, yeah, I believe it, yep.
Well,
All
all
right,
right.
thank you.
We've got about
Okay.
Cut it later, you gotta adjourn.
Oh, yeah.
Do
Need a
we have a
motion?
motion
You
to
gotta-
adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
It's
Yeah, good
unanimous.
job, John, yeah, and Jim.
You have a bunch of things to sign.
Thank you, Judge. I'm gonna get a stamp, is that legal? I think I'll get one made up.
I thought it was gonna be short.
Amy, what was that guy's name that was on the conservation that sold his house? Briggs, Diggs, or something, Walter Diggs?
How windy
I just wanna show you, look at this